Chapter 2049. A colorful pillar of light shot into the sky from the demonic tide area, illuminating the entire canyon. Around the pillar of light, a rain of light floated, covering hundreds of thousands of feet in the sky. It was extremely beautiful. After more than 10 flicks of a finger, the pillar of light and the strange rain of light disappeared. Immortal light like a pillar, auspicious air across the sky. Is this the legendary supreme immortal item about to be born? Is it the tree from the immortal world that suppresses the demonic creatures? Many cultivators couldn't help but be shocked. Before this, there were related rumors. There was an immortal tree suppressing the demonic creatures here. Once it was born, there would be dense immortal light rain, and auspicious colors, illuminating the 9 heavens and 10 lands. Now the pillar of light shot into the sky, confirming the rumors. In an instant, the news of the immortal tree's birth spread throughout the entire critical canyon like a hurricane. All the adventuring forces were excited when they heard the news. The immortal tree, an item from the immortal world of the 9 heavens. It contained boundless power and represented boundless blessings. It was rumored that a withered branch could kill a Tao integration perfected immortal, and a leaf could directly push a mortal to the void return saint realm. Although these rumors might be exaggerated, it was enough to see the miraculous and precious nature of the immortal tree. I'm going in. At this moment, the Iron Hand Saint could not be bothered with Jiang Tian anymore. He turned around and flew into the depths. Go, go, go. Quick, quick, quick. We have to take the initiative. In fact, the Iron Hand Saint was almost alone. Yichang had died, and many soul formation cultivators had been killed. There were only a few nascent soul cultivators left. However, at this moment he also rushed in without a care for his own safety. The reason was very simple. The benefits were too great. Is there really a treasure from the immortal world? A relic of a true god? Seeing the Iron Hand Saint leading the Black Moon Empire forward, the other great sects, powerful nations, and famous families were all shaken. Let's go. We have to take a look no matter what. Yes. How can we enter a treasure mountain and return empty-handed? Wealth moved people's hearts, and cultivation resources were too tempting. For a moment, countless sects and powerful countries could not wait any longer, and prepared to explore the depths of the canyon. But there's a supreme demonic creature there. That's right. It was said that the immortal tree was originally set up by a mighty person in the Middle Ages to suppress the supreme devil. That monster is surrounded by countless great devils. That is the place with the densest immortal chi, and also the place with the densest devil chi. It's extremely dangerous. Anyone below the level of a saint would be digging their own graves if they enter. Some sect leaders were also very hesitant. Recalling all kinds of terrifying records and legends, he felt a chill run down his spine. I heard that even if you're near the immortal tree, as long as you keep your distance from the demons and don't alarm them, you'll be able to reap great rewards. Yes, as long as we follow behind the powerful forces, we'll follow them wherever they go. As long as we keep a low profile and don't alarm the demons, we'll be safe. Many cultivators harbored fantasies and wishful thinking. He clearly knew that this kind of treasure snatching was akin to licking the blood off the blade and snatching food from the tiger's mouth. However, when they saw Taisho enter, they were still tempted and started to act. Just like the old saying, humans die for wealth and birds die for food. However, the Luoying sect and the Eastern Empire were still biding their time. Sir, what do you think? To everyone's surprise, Saint Qianma actually looked at Jiang Tian and asked. The balance has really been broken. Jiang Tian's expression was slightly solemn as he sighed. Saint Qianma thought of a possibility and exclaimed, Fellow Taoist, are you saying that the phenomenon in the demon tide area is the final radiance of the immortal tree and those demons are about to be born? Jiang Tian smiled but did not say anything. Fellow Taoist, is there really the legendary immortal tree, the treasures left behind by the immortal world and the god world? Eldest Princess Mou was also very curious. There were many related legends, but they were uncertain and confusing. That area was filled with mysteriousness, mystery, allure, and terror. In an instant, countless gazes fell on Jiang Tian, seeking his opinion. Clearly, He was treating Jiang Tian as one of those old monsters who knew everything in the world. This also made Jiang Tian helpless. Although he tried his best to keep a low profile and did not want to reveal any of his strength, there were some old friends that he had to protect. Everyone could still see that he was extraordinary from various details. However, it was obvious that eldest Princess Mou did not lack wisdom, and Lin Yang, Fang Goyu, and the others had also grown extremely quickly. They vaguely sensed that Jiang Tian was actually unwilling to keep his identity, so even now, they did not rashly acknowledge him. The treasures of the gods? If there really is, will Iron Hand and the others get a chance? Jiang Tian smiled disdainfully. Mou frowned and looked at Jiang Tian, asking in confusion, "Senior, what exactly is that?" "A fiend god." Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes calmly, but his slightly cold voice made people shudder. "A supreme fiend god that has been hungry for 100,000 years, and wants to devour the world and destroy all living beings." When everyone heard this, they all shuddered. He's pretending to be mysterious. This old monster is dishonest. Although Lian Huahan knew that Jiang Tian had an extraordinary background, she did not believe Jiang Tian's words, and could not help but sneer in her heart. That was because the treasures of sky immortals and sky gods in the depths of the critical canyon were not legends. After all, there were really predecessors who obtained immortal materials and divine materials from the depths and instantly became sages, obtaining the resources and foundation to become immortals, and going far away to the star sea to find a greater opportunity. At this moment, all kinds of phenomena were exactly the same as in the legends and records. It was the sign of the birth of an immortal item. As for why Jiang Tian did this, it was very simple. Scaring away one was one, and there would be less interference and competition in the subsequent treasure hunt. And Saint Qianma confirmed one of her guesses through Jiang Tian's words. The immortal tree that suppressed the demonic creatures was about to wither and disintegrate. The supreme demonic creatures were about to rise and even open a passage. She could not help but look at Jiang Tian and say, "The demonic creatures are about to rise. Fellow Taoist, you know the demonic nature of the demonic creatures, and should have a way to suppress them. At this moment, it's time for you to act righteously and save the world. Let's go to the demon tide area to suppress the demonic creatures together." Jiang Tian felt a headache coming on. It was that, with great power comes great responsibility, again. However, he could not blame Saint Qianma. She was a void reversion saint, and was equivalent to the pillar of this mainland. She had deep feelings for this mainland. Those words were not false and came out of sincerity. Jiang Tian believed that once the demon tide broke out, she would definitely give her all, and even sacrifice her life. "Don't worry, I'll make a move when it's time. It's just that I have other things to do now," Jiang Tian said awkwardly but politely. "Then let's part ways here. I'll lead the sect to the depths of the demon tide." Frowning, Saint Qianma suddenly took out her communication jade token, and circulated her cultivation with all her might. "Send a message." This was the communication jade token used by the Saint Alliance. In the Saint Origin mainland, many void reversion experts of the sacred grounds and god sects formed a Saint Alliance. They took it as their duty to suppress evil, wipe out the demonic creatures and protect the human race of the mainland. Once the message was sent, everyone received it at the same time. An extremely thin dermic power fluctuation shot up into the sky from the jade token. It was tens of thousands of feet long, and was still extending. In the process of extending, there was no dermic power being emitted. Like a dazzling thin line, it rushed out of the liminal Grand Canyon. When it rushed out of the liminal Grand Canyon, the dermic power fluctuation exploded like a firework. The dermic power fluctuation that contained the message was like an invisible wave that rolled out in all directions. These dermic power fluctuations would be received by the same communication jade token, and turned into a message. "The demon tide is coming in the liminal Grand Canyon." "Saint, that's just his side of the story. There's no need to be so nervous," Lian Huahan frowned and said. "If it's fake news, won't it disturb the void reversion saint's cultivation?" Chapter 2050. This is a serious matter. Once the demonic wave erupts, billions of lives will perish. Saint Qianma frowned with worry. Thus, Even if there is only a sliver of hope, we must defend with all our might. Now let's go to the deepest part of the canyon, the place where the auspicious light is. Determination appeared on her face. Good. Let's go at full speed. Lian Huan didn't have any objections, and was even impatient. However, her thoughts were different from Saint Qianma's. She simply thought that Jiang Tian was just scaring them. If they were late, they might even end up empty-handed. Let's go as well. At this moment, Grand Princess Mou had always been decisive and immediately said resolutely, "Once the demonic wave erupts, our Eastern Empire will be the first to be affected. The Empire will be in danger. Princess, we need to gather more cultivators and troops. But we can't rashly enter the canyon. It's too easy to die here. The residents within 200,000 miles of the evil-infested ridge must immediately move and set up a steel defense line to stop the demonic wave and annihilate it in this area." Lin Hanqing, Lin Yang, and Fang Jinlong were filled with battle intent and murderous intent. They emitted a fearless aura as they quickly discussed. Jiang Tian watched from the side and sighed at Lin Yang's rapid growth. He felt comforted in his heart. Especially when they faced danger and disaster, they still bravely faced it. They didn't abandon the civilians and used their actions to carry out Jiang Tian's concept of, a single spark can start a prairie fire. Cultivators were born between mortals. The strong should fight for the weak. This was because the hundreds of millions of weaklings were the vast ocean that supported the strong on their voyages. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. Give the weak a single spark, and it could start a prairie fire. Suddenly, Jiang Tian calmly said, "Don't worry. If you go now, you'll just die and become a delicacy in the mouth of the demon god." A golden core servant accidentally obtained a piece of Tao accumulating tea tree. His cultivation soared and reached spirit severing. Iron Hand Saint obtained a green bronze cauldron made from supreme treasure metal. It's priceless. Crown Prince Qingtian of the Firefox Empire obtained an immortal bone dagger that can slay mighty figures and saints. The sect leader of the Thunder Yang sect, Yang Yongchang, obtained the Taihao Divine Stone. It contains the essence of fire, and its price is comparable to that of a country. At this moment, some of the vanguard teams had already received news of supreme immortal materials and divine materials. The value of these immortal materials was immeasurable. Outside the canyon, one would only appear once in thousands or tens of thousands of years. It could rapidly increase one's cultivation base. In particular, it could increase the cultivation base of return to void stage cultivators. Even though he couldn't directly advance to the Dao integration stage, he would at least be able to advance by 1 or 2 minor levels. And how difficult was it to break through to the return to void stage? Many times, even after thousands of years of hard work, they still couldn't make a single step forward. When Lian Huan heard Jiang Tian's grumbling and saw that Sage Qianma had really stopped the procession, she couldn't help but feel even more disgusted with Jiang Tian. This person was truly despicable and shameless to the extreme. With so many treasures, did he really want to monopolize them all? "Sir, we have no other choice." Saint Qianma smiled bitterly. "I'm not asking you to retreat." Jiang Tian leisurely said, "That's right. We still have to resist the demon tide, but sharpening the knife won't delay the work of cutting firewood. Follow me and make some preparations. At least we can protect ourselves when the demon tide strikes. Fellow Taoist Qianma, don't be anxious. In my opinion, the demon tide won't erupt so soon." With that, he steered the flying boat and flew back the way he came. He didn't want to reveal the news about the 6 Paths lotus tree. But after all, Saint Qianma had risked her life to save him. Lin Yang and the others were also fated with him for 2 lifetimes. How could Jiang Tian sit by and watch them die? "Let's go." Eldest Princess Mou, Lin Hanqing, and the other leaders looked at each other and immediately followed Jiang Tian. Saint Qianma didn't hesitate and looked at Lian Huan. "Sect girl, let's go too." "Senior Qianma, this person is just a stranger to us. His words might not be trustworthy." Lian Huan firmly objected. "This person hides his head and shows his tail. He doesn't dare to show his true face. His behavior is suspicious. He doesn't seem to be a good person, and has ulterior motives. I think we still need to be vigilant and stay away from him." Sect girl, you worry too much. Saint Qianma shook her head gently and said with deep emotion, "This person's future is limitless. His vision has surpassed the entire continent. He doesn't want to have a deep relationship with us, so he doesn't reveal his true identity." Although Lian Huahan disdained in her heart, she couldn't object. Besides, Iron Hand Saint Yang Yongchang and the others have already gone deep into the blessed land and taken the initiative. I'm worried that our sect will get nothing. Saint Qianma pondered for a while and nodded. Then we'll split into 2 groups. You take your disciples deep into the blessed land, and I'll take Hua Xiangrong and the others to follow this fellow Taoist. Speaking of this, she couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. It was strange that until now, she still hadn't figured out the origin and name of Jiang Tian. But after a short contact, she had an inexplicable trust in Jiang Tian. Lian Huahan glanced angrily at Huang Linger, who was on Jiang Tian's flying boat. She was very annoyed. This girl is getting more and more outrageous. She has no respect for her elders. She even left without reporting to me. I'll find a chance to kill her. Let's go. However, Lian Huahan was eager to get the treasure and didn't want to waste time on this matter. She led the disciples and left quickly. Seeing that Lian Huahan led the team deep into the blessed land, Jiang Tian was expressionless. He looked on coldly and didn't say anything. He Kong Teichu was not a good person. In fact, Lian Huahan was extremely hypocritical. On the surface she was benevolent and virtuous, but in fact, she was extremely cold and cruel. She just regarded Huang Linger as a bargaining chip in the exchange of interests. Jiang Tian was already merciful not to kill her. Now she was stubbornly pursuing her own way and seeking death. How could Jiang Tian stop her? Soon, Jiang Tian led the group back tens of thousands of miles. Everyone looked at each other suspiciously. Why did fellow Taoist Jiang bring us back here? This place was already a safe zone. There were no demonic creatures around. However, there were also very few natural treasures. However, they knew that Jiang Tian had his reasons for doing so they didn't ask. In the end, Jiang Tian landed on a gentle slope. This place was very ordinary. There was nothing unusual about it. There was very little demonic qi. The soil was yellowish instead of the dark demonic earth. It was similar to the outside world. Everyone's expressions were even more strange. They didn't know what Jiang Tian was trying to do. I've waited bitterly on this continent for more than 10 years for your rebirth. At this time, Jiang Tian walked slowly to an ordinary-looking cassia lotus tree with his hands behind his back. He raised his head and looked at the crown of the tree. His eyes were deep as he sighed with emotion. With your help, you can help me reach the top of the divine transformation realm. Even though Jiang Tian had lived 2 lives, his heart was as hard as iron. He wouldn't change his expression even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. However, at this moment his painstaking plan finally came to fruition. He couldn't help but be so excited that his hands trembled slightly. Chapter 2051. In fact, when Jiang Tian entered the critical canyon, he had already confirmed the location of this tree through the records of his previous life. However, he remained calm and waited for the immortal light to erupt from the depths of the canyon to lure everyone over. Otherwise, once it was discovered, all the sages would snatch it. Fellow Taoist, isn't this? Seeing how excited Jiang Tian was, Saint Qianma could not help but ask. Do you think this is the cassia lotus tree? Jiang Tian could not help but laugh. How strange. Saint Qianma's divine sense spread out, and her heart skipped a beat. Because the surroundings of the tree were especially quiet, what was fascinating was that this seemed to be a safe harbor. There was actually a deer wandering on the grassland, carefree and without any worries. In the small river that looked like a jade belt, the white crane drank and pecked at ease, elegantly and leisurely combing its feathers. The flowers were in full bloom and the birds and beasts were not demonized. There seemed to be no danger and no killing. Within a few hundred miles, it did not fit in with the entire canyon. It was like heaven and hell. Saint Qianma was familiar with this scene. What was truly shocking was that from the entrance of the canyon, the demonic qi was actually 10 times denser than this area. In other words, this area was peaceful not because it was closer to the mainland, but because of other reasons. This is a pure land. Could it be because of the Cassia lotus tree? But this is clearly a mortal tree? Saint Qianma was slightly stunned. This is not the Cassia lotus tree, but the Six Paths lotus tree. The Six Paths Cassia lotus tree is the stem, but the branches are connected to an immortal lotus. Jiang Tian looked at the crown of the tree and could not help but sigh. The combination of two immortal plants and immortal flowers is very similar to the Cassia lotus tree in the mortal world. Back then, that mighty being was wise and farsighted. When he planted the Six Paths Cassia lotus tree to suppress the demonic creatures, he guessed that one day, the Six Paths Cassia lotus tree would be corroded by the demonic creatures and exhaust itself. Therefore, he planted an immortal lotus seed here, and connected it to the roots of the Six Paths Cassia lotus tree as a second layer of protection. In fact, it was even his final trump card. However, when the subimmortal tree of Six Paths Celestial Osmanthus collapsed, a vast amount of spiritual qi would be poured into the celestial lotus, nourishing its growth and strengthening, blocking the invasion of demonic qi and protecting the safety of the continent. Indeed, there are some details that are different from the ordinary Cassia lotus tree. It has a natural Tao, and it has a hint of the heavens. Saint Qianma looked at the branches and leaves carefully, and even the tiniest patterns. Suddenly, she felt a sense of calmness. That feeling was very mysterious. His mind and body became lighter, as if he could fly up and leave this world, straight into the vast starry sky, the nine heavens deity realm. But why is there no celestial light or auspicious aura? Saint Qianma asked suspiciously. If we don't encounter any monsters, this item won't show its might, Jiang Tian said with a smile. Suddenly, he took out a small bottle. With a flick of his finger, a stream of demonic blood rushed out from the bottle. This demon blood was the blood of a demon beast that Huang Linger and Sima Tu had casually killed when they were chasing after the flaming red toad. The demonic blood was already extremely thick. Following his divine sense, strange runes were drawn on the ground one after another. There were more and more of these runes, and they gradually formed a chapter that surrounded the Six Paths lotus tree. Everyone was surprised when they saw this. They had never seen or heard of these runes before. However, it seemed to be very profound and obscure. Every word seemed to have come from a more advanced civilization. These are immortal seal runes. Saint Qianmo's heart skipped a beat as her beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Immortal seal runes were very rare in this world. They came from the nine heavens. Among the founding ancestors of the Luoying sect, there was one who was obsessed with runes and charms. He left behind a large number of ancient books everywhere, including stone rubbing, stone inscriptions, stone carvings, metal runes, and so on. Saint Qianma had once seen the drawings of a few immortal seal runes in one of his most precious ancient books. Of course, this ancestor was not sure, but he thought that it was very likely to be immortal seal runes. And now, Saint Qianma felt that the runes written by Jiang Tian were very similar to the ones she saw in the past. I underestimated him. He is not someone from this world, but the reincarnation of a powerful being from the nine heavens. At this moment, Jiang Tian's back view was even more mysterious and unpredictable in Saint Qianma's heart. In fact, Saint Qianma had guessed correctly. Jiang Tian had written the immortal seal runes. The items from the immortal world were very intelligent. They were said to have spirits and could communicate with the immortal seal runes. The immortal seal runes contained Jiang Tian's consciousness. When it merged with the Six Paths lotus tree, a strange scene happened. Silently, the tree trunk suddenly emitted auspicious colors and immortal light. It was beautiful, mysterious, and peaceful. It really is the immortal tree. When everyone saw this, their minds immediately surged and they were extremely shocked, and they almost cried out in surprise. Shoo, quiet! However, they immediately realized that Jiang Tian was using the immortal seal runes to communicate with the immortal tree. It was similar to a kind of prayer and sacrifice to obtain its blessings and blessings. Of course, they could not disturb him. In an instant, many cultivators within a radius of 10 miles were motionless like clay statues. They did not make any sound. Everyone held their breaths and restrained their dermic powers. They stared at Jiang Tian as he wrote the runes to communicate with the immortal tree. Then an even more delightful scene happened. On the tree trunk, Branches grew rapidly. Moreover, they were completely different from the previous branches. These new branches were as white as jade and crystal clear. At first glance, people would think that they were newly born bones. Not only the color and texture, but also the shape. They really looked like the bones of humans and beasts. It was a little creepy, but there was also a mysterious and holy feeling. It was as if the sound of the great Tao could be heard. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. This tree was truly miraculous. It was simply like a god. At the moment when the crowd was dumbstruck, one of the branches extended out like an arm. One of the branches was like a finger, and it came into contact with Jiang Tian's finger. It seemed to be confirming Jiang Tian's identity. Immediately after, pink and white flower buds bloomed on the bone-like branches. After the flower buds bloomed, everyone realized that they were lotus flowers. They were 6-petaled lotus flowers. Each petal was the size of a bamboo hat and emitted waves of light. They were crystal clear and surrounded by auspicious qi. The fragrance flowed and spread out. When these multicolored lights and propitious vapors enveloped everyone felt as if they were floating in the air, their entire bodies feeling very comfortable. At this moment, everyone felt a close connection with heaven and earth, with nature, and with the great Tao. It was as if they had become the master of this world. They were recognized by nature and resonated with the great Tao. In short, their bodies seemed to have abundant and irresistible power. It was as if they could break this continent with a punch. They were also extremely energetic. Their divine senses were unprecedentedly sharp and vast. The whole world was more real and clearer than before. Their souls were very lively. All kinds of negative emotions were gone. Peace and joy filled their hearts. They were even full of ambition and hope. It was as if there were endless possibilities. Of course, the one who had the biggest reaction was Huanglinger, who had the Yiwood spiritual body. Countless rays of auspicious light and multicolored light poured into her head. Even the ground surged with auspicious light and auspicious colors, completely enveloping her, turning into 5-colored clouds that were brilliant and elegant. The place she was in was like the holy land of immortals. At this moment, she was like a blooming immortal lotus. In an instant, her skin was crystal clear like jade. Immortal light soared into the sky, overshadowing everything around her. Chapter 2052. The sound of Tao echoed around Huanglinger. The sound of Tao was very soft, like a flower bud blooming, like a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon and spreading its wings. It was peaceful and quiet, but there was also a kind of vigorous vitality. When the soft sound of Tao reached everyone's ears, it was like a morning bell, shaking everyone's heart and bringing them closer to the laws of Tao. At this moment, Huanglinger cleansed herself with the supreme immortal light and auspicious qi. She was really like an immortal, peerless and unparalleled. At the very least, she was like a celestial being right now. She was invulnerable to all spells, untainted by all filth, untainted by even a speck of dust, and flawless. She was like a celestial being from the 9 heavens. Huanglinger also understood that Jiang Tian was guiding her fortuitous opportunity to help her break through. And this opportunity was too rare and precious. It was called an immortal opportunity. Not only was it rare in the divine origin world, it was also rare in the core area of the central galaxy, the legendary territory of the 9 celestial sects. Therefore, she focused her mind and closed her eyes, eliminating all unnecessary thoughts. She opened her body and let the immortal light and spirit qi from the 6 paths lotus tree enter her body and cleanse her. And everyone was shocked to see that Huanglinger's cultivation was rising. From level 3 to level 4, level 5, level 6, she went all the way until she reached the late stage, perfected, and broke through to the soul formation stage. And she was still going up as if there was no end to it. Everyone even felt that. Her leveling up was not like an increase in cultivation, but an evolution in the level of life. It was like a cell evolving into an animal, an ape evolving into a Homo sapiens. There was a qualitative change. Of course, this was not an illusion. This was because her constitution was also improving. She had become an immortal grade nascent soul. And from there, she had become a divine transformation realm cultivator. Damn, this leveling up is as easy as drinking water. It's indeed the deity tree. The effect of the immortal chi is so terrifying. It's like being reborn. At this moment, everyone was shocked and screamed in their hearts. Countless people were envious. Even Saint Qianma was shocked. At this moment, she finally realized how terrifying Jiang Tian was. Whether it was his strength or his experience, they were both hard to come by. At this moment, she also understood that the relationship between Jiang Tian and Huang Linger must be very deep. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Jiang Tian had previously said that if the Luoying sect was faced with a calamity, he would lend a helping hand. But it was only once. That was because Lian Huahan was too heartless towards Huang Linger. She only treated her as a bargaining chip for the marriage alliance, and did not cultivate her sincerely. If Lian Huahan valued Huang Linger a little more, Jiang Tian would definitely protect the Luoying sect for 10,000 years. Or even 100,000 years. However, it was too late to say anything now. Lian Huahan was too short-sighted and too utilitarian. Gradually, Huang Linger's cultivation progress slowed down. In the end, it stopped at the third level of the semi-god realm and stopped moving. Let's stop here. At this moment, Jiang Tian scanned with his divine consciousness and saw that the nascent soul had become a god and the spirit embryo had turned into a divine treasure. Moreover, it was an immortal-grade divine treasure and a god. At this moment, her divine treasure was like a lotus petal, layer upon layer, including a god that was like a fairy in a flower. It was beautiful and moving. Huang Linger cried tears of joy. She had actually reached the semi-god realm. This was a kind of extreme sublimation. It was not only her. Mou, Fang Jinlong, Lin Yang, Lin Hanqing, Fang Goyu. The rest of the people's cultivation had also increased by more than one level. Even their grades had increased. All of them were overjoyed and were deeply grateful to Jiang Tian. They bowed deeply. This was like giving them a new life. Especially the disciples of Saint Qianma. Speaking of which, they had nothing to do with Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian had joined temporarily as a servant. They had met by chance, but Jiang Tian had given them such a great opportunity. Immediately after, Jiang Tian calmly accepted their respect without saying a word. Then, with a calm expression, he wrote another immortal seal chapter with the fiend blood, prayed and communicated with the Six Paths lotus tree. Suddenly, the tree was quiet for a while. Suddenly, the branches shook and lotus flowers fell. At this moment, the world was very quiet. Only the sound of the falling flowers could be heard. They were bright and clear like jade. The petals danced in the air and a fragrance spread out, flying into the pure land. Soon, there was an extra petal in everyone's hand. It was as if it had a spirit. There were no more and no less. At this moment, everyone was shocked and in awe. This tree was not a demon, but it had a spirit. This was an authentic immortal tree. It was too magical. Jiang Tian spoke for the first time. Everyone, drip a drop of blood on the lotus petal in your hand. He panted and seemed to be a little tired. Writing an immortal seal was originally a very tiring thing. This time he wrote 2 chapters in a row. Although the immortal tree and the immortal puppet were naturally sensitive to fiend blood, and he could write briefly without using Dharma power, it was still very tiring. No one dared to be negligent. Even Saint Qianma dripped a drop of blood on the petal, and without exception, the drop of blood was absorbed the moment it landed on the petal. At this time, Jiang Tian sat cross-legged under the tree and said lazily, "As long as you carry this lotus petal with you, you will be protected by the immortal light, and can kill soul formation fiend beasts and fiend generals 1 or 2 times. You have 2 choices now. 1. Enter the depths of the canyon and explore for treasures. Secondly, protect me while I cultivate. I want to remind you that the road ahead is dangerous. You may not get anything or even lose your life. After all, although the lotus petal is strong, it has already left the trunk. The immortal light is limited and the number of times you can kill it is limited. Protect me. Wait until I step into the divine transformation realm. In this canyon, I can be invincible and kill everything. By then, if you follow me, are you afraid that you won't get anything?" As soon as Jiang Tian finished speaking, eldest Princess Mou was the first to express her stance. All the cultivators of the Eastern Empire are willing to protect Senior. We will not hesitate to sacrifice our lives. Saint Qianma frowned and asked, Fellow Taoist, you want to use this tree to advance? Will it consume the life of this tree? At this moment, she had already guessed the truth. This 6 paths lotus tree was the last barrier against the demonic creatures. If it was eaten by Jiang Tian, then the demonic creatures and fiend generals would also drive straight in and be unstoppable. Only the human cultivators could rush forward one after another and form a steel wall with their flesh and blood to stop the attack. However, that would mean that countless human cultivators would die. Of course it will consume a lot of energy. Jiang Tian took out a wine pot and took a sip of fruit wine. Sigh, this tree was born too early. It's too young. I have a big appetite. I'm afraid I'll eat it until it's half dead. Saint Qianma trembled slightly and said, Once this tree is damaged, I'm afraid the demon tide will be unstoppable. Do you have a plan to deal with the demon tide? Of course. Jiang Tian exhaled a mouthful of wine. Only 2 words fell, but he seemed very confident and certain. Saint Qianma's expression changed rapidly. Obviously, many thoughts flashed through her mind in an instant, and the ideological struggle was extremely intense. After a few seconds, Saint Qianma took a deep breath and said, That's right. Fellow Taoist, I'll trust you this time. Immediately, she turned to look at all the disciples and said loudly, All disciples, set up camp and arrange the battle formation to protect fellow Taoist Jiang. Yes. Hua Xiangrong and many other disciples responded with a stern expression. They landed around the 6 paths lotus tree and set up the formation. Orders and prohibitions were strictly followed. Although Saint Qianma was not the sect master, she was a woman of her word. She treated people and things with sincerity. All the disciples respected her from the bottom of their hearts. We will also protect fellow Taoist. Princess Mo also gave the order. All the cultivators of the Eastern Empire were armed and guarded around Jiang Tian like the most loyal guards. This 6 paths lotus tree was priceless. It was fine if it was not discovered, but once it was discovered, there would definitely be giants coming to fight for it. And Jiang Tian was at the critical moment of breaking through. He was the most vulnerable, and could easily die. Chapter 2053. Thank you everyone. Jiang Tian clasped his hands together and said. Then he walked to the 6 paths lotus tree step by step, and took out a piece of top-grade crystal. The crystal contained traces of immortal spiritual energy. It was obvious that it was of a very high grade. In the years he spent in the Eastern Empire, and the 10 years he spent as a transcendent mortal, Jiang Tian didn't just walk down the path of a transcendent mortal. Instead, he collected countless immortal crystals in preparation for his breakthrough to the divinity transformation realm. The immortal crystals were crystal clear, and gave off thousands of rays of light. They floated in the air and looked very magical. Under Jiang Tian's will, they landed around the 6 paths lotus tree, and formed an irregular and strange pool. After inspecting for a while, Jiang Tian found that the arrangement of the crystals was correct. He then walked into the pool, and sat down with his legs crossed. Following a special pattern, he placed many immortal herbs and godly materials in the pool. They were all very valuable. How strange! Does this fellow cultivator want to take a bath? Making a pool? Sima too rubbed his chin, and was confused. Everyone was also confused and did not know what Jiang Tian was doing. Why did he use such luxurious crystals with immortal spiritual energy to make a bath? Dragon transformation pool? Suddenly, Saint Qianma took a closer look and could not help but exclaim. This was a kind of formation knowledge, but it was very profound and mysterious. It was said that it came from the immortal world. Its name, Dragon Transformation Pool, was derived from the words, when a fish leaps over the dragon gate, it will transform into a dragon. This pool was very magical. It was said that if a loach was placed in it, it would transform into a real dragon. At this moment, Jiang Tian closed his eyes and thought for a while. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and used his blood essence to draw immortal seal runes. It was different from when he used his demonic blood to draw immortal seal runes. At this moment, Jiang Tian's face was serious and he seemed to be struggling. He gritted his teeth and every word he said was very powerful. These immortal seal runes that were drawn with his blood essence quickly formed a prayer and wrapped around the 6 paths lotus tree. The prayer text turned into blood-red specks of light. They seem to have fused into the 6 paths lotus tree, but they also seem to have been absorbed by the tree. However, the 6 paths lotus tree did not react at all. Not even a single petal fell from the tree. The 6 path lotus tree, pure and untainted, above the heavens, pure and unparalleled. It cleanses my mortal body, cleanses my mortal bonds, and ascends to the heavens, transcends mortality and becomes a god. Jiang Tian's eyes were sharp as he silently chanted and prayed to communicate with the 6 paths lotus tree. All of a sudden, the earth gushed divine spring. Streams of milky white spring water gushed out from the tree roots and tree trunks. This was the tree sap. It was milky white in color, as if it was jade marrow. It flickered with fluorescent light. Flowers fell from the sky. And the petals fell from the sky. Many 6-path lotus flowers were sparkling and translucent. They carried dense immortal spiritual energy as they floated down beside Jiang Tian. The fragrance was strong, making one feel refreshed. At this moment, all types of crystals, precious metals, and immortal crystals blossomed with precious light. Multicolored light flowed about, and 7 colors curled about. It was extremely divine. As for Jiang Tian, at this moment he finally started to transform. He broke away from his mortal body and broke through to the soul formation stage. He sat in the dragon transformation pool. His body suddenly straightened, and his bones rubbed against each other, giving off a crackling sound. His originally stooped body instantly became as tall and straight as a mountain. He had a dignified appearance. Everyone was shocked to discover that his aura had also changed greatly. He broke away from his mortal body and broke away from the mortal world. In an instant, he became divine and ethereal, as if he could look down on the heavens and the 10,000 worlds. At this moment, his black hair danced in the night wind. His bright eyes were as clear as a spring. His dark and old skin became as clear as jade. The lines of his face were gentle and perfect, with a kind of perfect divinity. In an instant, Jiang Tian turned from a dispirited and lonely middle-aged man into a peerless and otherworldly young cultivator. He was like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world. He was shrouded in light, and his white robe was otherworldly. This is the benefit of going further on the path of becoming immortal. The further you go, the more transcendental you will be in the soul formation stage. The higher you go. At this moment, Saint Qianma saw this scene and exclaimed in shock. What if you don't go far enough as a mortal? At this moment, Mou Linyang, Fang Gouyu and the other cultivators of the Eastern Empire, as well as Hua Xiangrong and the other elite disciples of the Luoying sect, all surrounded her. At this moment, Huang Linger couldn't help but ask. Going from the nascent soul stage to the soul formation stage is indeed a huge bottleneck in cultivation. From then on, you will enter the later stage of cultivation. Saint Qianma said. The soul formation stage is like a kite released by a child, and the soul formation stage is like tying a string to the kite and holding it in the child's hand. This kite can naturally fly with the wind, but the prerequisite is that there must be a string. Otherwise, it won't be able to control the direction. It's like a fallen leaf in the wind. Although it can be blown high for a while, it will eventually fall to the ground. Everyone nodded, as if they had understood something. Saint Qianma said earnestly, the soul formation stage is just an imitation of the gods, but it is not a real god. We are still mortals. Our cultivation and abilities can't reach that level. But when you control the great Tao of heaven and earth, you will always have a feeling that you are a god in the vast world. At this time, it's easy to lose your Taoist heart, lose your true self and look down on mortals. In the end, you will go mad and go against the great Tao of heaven and earth. But if you are a soul formation stage abyss, it won't be like this. Always remember that I am still immortal. I won't lose my mind, and I won't be arrogant. Naturally, I won't go mad and pass the soul formation stage. I will go further to the void return and Tao reunion stage. As soon as she finished speaking, Jiang Tian's side changed again. At this moment, the array of the dragon transformation pool was activated. The milky white tree sap was boiling and dense. Deity Qi was soaring to the sky. Divine light broke the clouds and the world was blazing, making people unable to open their eyes. What's that? It seems to be deity Qi. At this moment, the cultivators in the critical boundary valley all turned their heads and looked in the direction of the Six Paths lotus tree in shock. Could it be that an extraordinary deity material has appeared? Let's go. Let's go and have a look. Some of the cultivators looked at each other and then flew in this direction with determined expressions. Although treasures had appeared in the depths of the critical boundary valley, and they had indeed gained a lot along the way, they had encountered more and more demons and demon generals, and they were getting stronger and stronger. But now, in a safer place, there was an even stronger deity Qi erupting, which inevitably made people think that there were deity material and deity material there. If it was true, this would naturally be the first choice. After all, it was safer here. Lian Huahan, who had already gone deep into the critical boundary valley, had encountered many demons and was covered in wounds. Demonic Qi lingered around her body. At this moment, she turned her head and looked in the direction of the Six Paths lotus tree with confusion and suspicion in her eyes. Could it be that the strange cultivator wasn't lying to me? Is there really a treasure trove of deities and deities there? However, she immediately shook her head and still didn't believe it. She led the disciples deeper into the critical boundary valley. Rumble. When Jiang Tian was bathed in the tree sap of the dragon transformation pool, and Jiang Tian had absorbed enough deity Qi, the essence Qi in his body suddenly boiled. His Qi and blood rushed into the sky like a dragon, directly turning into a dragon-shaped Qi pillar. It split the heavens and the earth, parting the demonic Qi clouds, and piercing through the heavens and earth like a peerless sword. At that moment, even the thick and evil demonic Qi and deity Qi and blood were torn apart by Jiang Tian's dragon-shaped Qi and blood. It couldn't even withstand a single blow. At this moment, everyone was shocked and couldn't believe it. What kind of physique was that? Could it be in deity-grade nascent soul? Could in deity-grade physique be so strong? He was only in the nascent soul realm, but he could produce such powerful and vigorous Qi and blood. It was as if a true dragon of the 9 heavens had awakened. At this moment, Saint Qianma noticed that Jiang Tian's spirit embryo had already transformed into a deity treasure. Jiang Tian's deity treasure was too majestic and vast. It was a deity treasure that flowed with deity light. Among them, the chaotic 9-orifice nascent soul was also rapidly evolving into a deity treasure. It was like a baby that was growing healthily, becoming a young man, stronger and more powerful. Chapter 2054. While Jiang Tian was in the midst of his breakthrough, many old immortals and living fossils on this continent woke up one after another, either because they had received a message from Saint Qianma, or sensed the unusual movement of the Six Paths lotus tree. In a world of ice and snow, a cold moon sprinkled down 10,000 rays of clear light. Ancestral court of the Frosty Moon Sword sect of the North Sea. This place was cold, otherworldly, transcendent, and clean. Suddenly, the door opened. A beautiful middle-aged cultivator, wearing a white robe embroidered with the image of a cold moon, slowly stepped out of the door. His temperament was cold to the extreme, and his sharpness was exposed. It was eerie and bone-piercing, like an unsheathed sword that was 10,000 years old ice. If someone looked closely, they would find that his skin was as clear as ice and there were small sword auras and runes of the great Tao on it. It was like a golden Buddha. It was no longer a body of flesh and blood. It was a body of laws and great Tao. Behind him, the disciples knelt on the ground one after another. Farewell, ancestral patriarch. We hope that you can enter the canyon and make a breakthrough to the void return level and become a Tao reunion perfected immortal. Even the current sect leader of the Frosty Moon Sword sect knelt on the ground. Immortal materials have appeared in the liminal region. An ancient sage has come out of seclusion, but there is also a demon tide coming. Those who follow will live, and those who defy will die. The current sect leader of the Frosty Moon Sword sect had tears in his eyes, and his expression was extremely tragic. The so-called ancient sages were experienced void return cultivators. They had a long lifespan and were called living fossils. They were nearing the end of their lifespans, and usually only had a few hundred years left. If they couldn't reach the Tao reunion level and extend their lifespan, they would turn into a pile of dust and bones. This old man was the founder of the Frosty Moon Sword sect, a void return ancient sage. Sword demon. Dugachiobai. Originally, he couldn't find the opportunity to break through, so he decided to go into seclusion for 100 years and wait for death. He didn't even care about the opening of the liminal canyon. That was because he thought that there wouldn't be any resources that could help him reach the Tao reunion level this time. But now, he felt that there was an opportunity to reach the Tao reunion level. Okay. Sword demon Dugachiobai only nodded. With a determined look on his face, he turned into a peerless ice sword and soared into the sky, shooting towards the critical canyon. Not only the Cold Moon Sword sect. 9 Mysteries sect, Tian Luo sect, Luoing sect, Reincarnation sect, Thunder Yang sect. The figures of the ancient saints all turned into auras that pierced through the heavens and the earth as they flew toward the critical canyon. Even the Pill Cauldron peak of the Hall of Ancient Medicine, where Pill Sage Gu he had been in seclusion for 1,000 years, suddenly shone brightly. A beam of light shot toward the critical Grand Canyon. In the universe, from a mysterious unknown place, an old man slowly walked over. The old man walked out from the darkness. He wore hemp clothes that were sewn and patched up, making him look like a beggar's ragged clothes. The old man's appearance was also extremely haggard. His skin was as rough as the bark of an old tree. His qi and blood had long since declined to the extreme. Not even a trace of qi could be sensed from him. It was as if he was a person who was about to die. But this skinny old man crossed tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of miles with every step he took. The cold and desolate universe was like flat ground under his feet. Behind him was a little girl in a purple dress. She looked like a porcelain doll, but she was already a nascent soul cultivator. The cultivators of Saint Origin World are really getting worse and worse. 100,000 years ago, there were still people who could reach the Tao reunion level. But now, there isn't a single Tao reunion perfected immortal in the entire continent. Indeed, the orthodoxy is incomplete, and the immortal spells no longer exist. What a pity. Where is the great opportunity that I'm looking for? I'm so worried. Could it be in that canyon? Grandpa, what's the great opportunity? The little girl in a red dress asked vaguely while eating a candied hawthorn. I can't say. Don't let anyone hear it. The old man stroked his beard and said mysteriously, Anyway, let's go there and take a look. In the next moment, he sped up and rushed toward the critical canyon. At this time, after seeing the light of the Six Paths Lotus Tree and the commotion caused by Jiang Tian's breakthrough, many teams of sects and countries had returned from the depths of the critical canyon, and were peeping not far away from the Six Paths Lotus Tree. It's really a deity material. A treasure tree, a divine tree. Have you noticed that Huang Linger, Sima Tu, Dongfang Moyu and almost all of them have improved their cultivation? Everyone exclaimed. If they had known that there was a deity tree here, they wouldn't have gone to the depths of the critical canyon. They didn't even find the deity tree, and they even risked their lives and went through cruel battles. Suddenly, someone's gaze landed on Jiang Tian. This kid used a deity crystal as a bathtub, and the sap of the deity tree as a bath. What kind of great opportunity is that? The person exclaimed and his eyes shone brightly. In an instant, the gazes of the many cultivators outside fell onto Jiang Tian in unison. He might be able to reach the soul formation level, and even the void return level. One of them murmured with envy and greed. Why? He didn't plant the deity tree. Why should he be the only one enjoying it? We have a share too. Suddenly, someone said with hatred and greed. The entire world was his enemy. In an instant, Jiang Tian felt waves of crazy killing intent surging toward him. Auspicious qi gushed out and deity light filled the air. More and more cultivators gathered around the Six Paths Lotus Tree, and Jiang Tian instantly became the center of attention. The cultivators of the Eastern Empire and the Luoying sect also looked at the surrounding cultivators warily. Although there was no conflict, there was an undercurrent surging, and there was a sense of oppression as if a storm was coming. Would the dragon transformation pool become the place where Jiang Tian turned from a cocoon into a butterfly and soared into the sky and become a dragon? Or a place where he died and turned into a pile of bones? Everyone realized that this place had been exposed and was no longer as peaceful as before. A great battle was about to break out. Thump! There was a muffled sound. In the dragon transformation pool, divine light flickered and shot out. It was so dazzling that people couldn't bear to look at it directly. Many cultivators were so agitated that tears flowed down their cheeks. That was the light that burst out from the vast amount of essence chi and immortal light. It was too tempting for cultivators. The dragon transformation pool wasn't big, only a few feet in radius. It was filled with the sap of the deity tree, which was milky white and crystal clear, as if there were stars sprinkling down. It floated slightly, and the 6 paths lotus tree, various deity crystals, treasure medicines and divine metals on it rose and fell, emitting a fragrant and auspicious chi, as if it could give birth to a true dragon and let mortals be reborn. As Jiang Tian catalyzed it, dragons of spirit chi rose into the sky, and the immortal light turned into colorful clouds in the shape of various deity birds and divine beasts. It looked very magical. The scene became more and more shocking and vast. Dragons of spirit chi ran through the sky and the ground, and bright immortal light shrouded the 9 heavens and 10 lands, illuminating half of the canyon. Auspicious chi filled the sky and spread out continuously. At this time, Jiang Tian was like a flawless deity, meditating in the dragon transformation pool. His clothes fluttered, his black hair fluttered like a waterfall, and his body was crystal clear. He was using the immortal chi to refine his body and wash away his immortality. Blood chi spurted out of his acupoints like a true dragon, surging like a tide, surging with power. His chaotic divine nascent soul was evolving and growing, quickly transforming into a god. Soon many divine grade laws were also being refined and solidified, turning into Great Tao. A divine grade Great Tao. Such a Great Tao could be used in any situation, and its grade was too high. It was incomparably tough, dense, and heavy, like the ultimate truth, and it could easily destroy and suppress the Great Tao controlled by ordinary Return to Void stage cultivators. Jiang Tian could kill Return to Void stage saints before, but that was only in the early stages. If he encountered a mid-stage Void stage cultivator, his chances of winning would be extremely low. That was why he was sent flying by the Iron Hand Saint with a single slap. However, after breaking through to the soul formation stage this time, there would be a qualitative transformation. He could kill any soul formation stage cultivator, regardless of their level or grade, with a raise of his hand. He was not afraid of any Return to Void stage cultivators, even if they were veteran Return to Void final stage cultivators. His chances of killing them were extremely high. At this time, Jiang Tian had not broken through yet, but everyone could already feel the terrifying pressure he brought about. In short, everyone felt as if they were facing a Return to Void stage saint, and the psychological pressure was extremely heavy. The scene was shocking, and many people gasped. Chapter 2055. Just as everyone was attracted by the scene of Jiang Tian's breakthrough, in the depths of the canyon, where the demon tide area was bursting with immortal light and auspicious chi, the earth and mountains suddenly shook. Boom! The earth cracked and huge vines and roots rushed out from the ground, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws like octopuses. Each of them was thousands of feet tall, as black glue and surrounded by demon chi. They were covered with bone spikes and surrounded by many demon chi laws. For a moment, the entire region in the depths of the critical boundary canyon was filled with demon chi, and black smoke rose into the sky, blocking vision and even divine sense, cutting off the laws. This world was suddenly filled with cruel and violent emotions, which could interfere with people's Tao heart, and make people with weak hearts instantly become demon chi. All kinds of demons and demon generals appeared and attacked human cultivators, turning this area into a demon domain in an instant. Any cultivator who was in this place would feel a chill in their hearts and have an extremely bad premonition. Lian Huahuan's team. Not far away. The space was distorted like ripples on water, as if it could connect to another time and space. Roar! A few demon generals charged out from inside. All of them were covered in pitch-black scales, their fangs protruded outwards, and their faces were hideous and terrifying. They were like evil spirits that had walked out from a sea of blood and hell. They held evil sabers in their hands as they charged forward with a terrifying gust of wind. Fellow cultivators, save me. A nascent soul realm female cultivator of the Luoying sect held a pair of fiery red bracelets in her hands, which were surging with fire laws. One bracelet was thrown out, and the other one was used to protect her body, but she was immediately at a disadvantage and cried for help in fear. Kill. Lian Huahan was shocked and attacked with her sword. With her void return cultivation, she used her full strength and barely killed a demon general. Several demon generals were pushed back, but she was already exhausted and panting, feeling extremely uncomfortable. Thank you for saving me, master. The nascent soul realm female cultivator had just bowed and thanked her with a joyful face, and was about to fly toward the large flying ship. All of a sudden, a demonic vine the size of a giant palm reached out from the ground at lightning speed and grabbed the female cultivator, dragging her into the large crack. Ah! Master, save! The female cultivator's screams came to an abrupt end, and the world returned to a palpitating silence. However, in this deathly silence, there was also a sound that made one's scalp tingle. Crack! Crack! It was the sound of teeth grinding against bones. Slurp! Patter! It was the sound of raw meat being chewed and bone marrow being sucked, making everyone nervous and nauseous. As expected, a demon general climbed out from the edge of the crack shrouded in black fog. He held a human leg bone in his hand, which should have belonged to that nascent soul disciple. He gnawed on it non-stop, causing blood to drip down, drenching his chest. His eyes, which were mostly white and had extremely small pupils, emitted an extremely cold light. He looked down at everyone with disdain, as if a high-level creature was looking down at a low-level creature. There was also a hint of greed in his eyes, as if all the cultivators were his food. Master! Everyone felt a chill run down their spines, and a wave of indescribable grief welled up in their hearts. This female disciple had been with them for many years, and their feelings for her were very deep. She was an innocent girl who stood aloof from worldly affairs, and she was very lovable. Some time ago, she had been betrothed to an elite disciple of a famous sect, and they had planned to become Tao companions at the end of the year. Every time her fiancé was mentioned, she would reveal a shy and sweet smile, and her face would blush as she begged everyone to stop talking about it. She was nervous, but she also yearned for it. However, at this moment, she had actually become this demon's food and died, causing everyone to sigh in regret. Kill him! Several disciples were furious, and their grief and indignation reached the extreme. They took out their Dharma treasures and Tao weapons, and charged toward the demon general. Are you trying to show off to me? You're courting death. Even Lian Huahan was furious. Her pretty face was ice cold as she took out her flying sword and slashed toward the demon general. However, the demon general did not continue fighting. He stomped his feet on the ground and soared into the air, falling into the crack and disappearing. Lian Huahan revealed a hint of contempt. She resentfully put away her flying sword and cursed. You can't even withstand a single blow. However, all of a sudden, ah! Master, save me! Puff! Chi! At the end of the group, a few more demon generals suddenly attacked from the dense black devil fog. Several disciples were beheaded in the blink of an eye. Some had their spirit embryo divine treasures pierced by the demon weapons, and some were forcefully dragged into the crack. Lian Huahan and the others attacked, but it was useless. The demon generals' defensive abilities were astonishing. Their skin was rough and their flesh was thick. Ordinary true weapons and Tao weapons could not do anything to them. Only by taking out a sacred weapon several times in a row could they seriously injure them. However, human cultivators would often die after being contaminated by the devil qi. They could not hold on for long. Lian Huahan was stunned for a moment. Only then did she realize that she had fallen for the demon general's diversionary tactic. The demon general's actions, which were similar to a show of force, were only to attract her attention so that her companions could attack. You little rascal, hiding your head and showing your tail. Shameless demon, despicable and shameless. If you have the ability, come out and fight with me. Lian Huahan could not help but curse. However, the demon general was determined not to come out. Only the sounds of chewing, tearing, swallowing, and sucking came from the depths of the crack. There was also a wave of blood-curdling screams. These disciples were also eaten alive. Master, this demon general is so scary. The disciples under Lian Huahan were all trembling in fear. What's there to be afraid of? If you dare to come out again, I'll slap you to death. Lian Huahan said proudly. Haha. Little worm, you're so arrogant. A shout shook the heavens and the earth. Within a radius of 10,000 miles, a violent pressure swept over, causing people to tremble in fear. Amidst the lingering devil chi, a demon race powerhouse who was 100 feet tall walked over. Half of his face had already turned into white bones. Some rotten flesh hung on it, and rotten insects wriggled in it. However, the other half of his face was incomparably handsome. Patter. The cultivators of the Luoying sect all took a few steps back. The entire large flying ship regretted taking a few steps back. Do you want to have a try with me? This demon race powerhouse was wearing a purple copper armor full of traces of rust. No one knew how long it had been there. He held a pitch-black demon saber in his hand. Looking at his strength, he had actually reached the return to Void Realm. He should be called a demon general. The demon chi around him was so dense that it seemed to be solid. Fragments of the great Tao floated up and down, filled with a tragic will of destruction. Kill! Lian Huahan shouted. With an unyielding fighting spirit, she soared into the sky. She even took out a sacred weapon. With a fierce killing intent that seemed to be able to cut through the heavens, she charged toward the demon race saint. You're just an ant. The demon general's face was full of disdain. He swept his large hand, like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, and grabbed the sacred weapon that Lian Huahan had thrown out. Crack. There was a sound. He suddenly crushed it. The sacred weapon's light dimmed. It was tainted by the devil chi, and its magic power was exhausted in a matter of seconds. What? Lian Huahan was shocked. She had just destroyed a protective Dharma artifact, and had not had time to activate the rest. The demon general's fist had already landed on Lian Huahuan's body. Whoosh! Lian Huahan was instantly sent flying more than 100 miles. She crashed through several mountain peaks before coming to a stop, her face covered in dust. Looking up, she saw that the large flying ship had already been smashed to pieces by the demon general. Many disciples scattered in all directions like headless flies. In the ancient horn, more and more demon soldiers poured out of the spatial passageways like dumplings. In the end, they surrounded the disciples of the Luoying sect like a tide. Ah! Save me! Spare me! Master, where is Master? A large number of casualties appeared. Puff! A large hand covered in scales reached out and pierced through the chest of a disciple. Even the deity exploded. Swoosh! A blade with dark and dense demon chi swept across. A disciple's head flew out, and was grabbed by a demon soldier. The demon soldier madly gnawed on the head, causing his mouth to be filled with blood. Before the headless corpse fell, 7 or 8 demon soldiers swarmed over and fought with each other. The corpse was torn into pieces. Roar! Sweet! The demon soldiers each held a piece of the corpse and gnawed on it. All kinds of organ fragments spilled out, dripping with blood. Chapter 2056. Where is Master? Zhongnu, please save me. The disciples of the Luoying sect screamed as they fell one by one. They desperately looked at Lian Huahan for help. This. Lian Huahuan's eyes were wide open. Her pretty face was as pale as paper, and her delicate body trembled slightly. However, she did not dare to go forward and save them. She did not even dare to watch. At this moment, she regretted it. She regretted not listening to Jiang Tian's advice. She had underestimated the enemy too much. It turned out that there would really be a demonic wave. The Luoying sect was just a typical example. In fact, most sects were weaker than the Luoying sect. When they encountered a demonic wave, they were even more miserable. At that time, at least 10,000 cultivators had died. Many sects were annihilated. Could it be that the immortal tree is really dead? Lian Huahan decided to retreat and not go any further. What exactly is that supreme demonic being? It actually managed to destroy the supreme immortal tree? Also the Iron Hand Saint, Lei Yongchang, and the others have not returned yet. I don't know if they are dead or alive. Before retreating, she looked at the deepest part of the canyon with a trace of suspicion on her face. This immortal tree is not dead. It has been contaminated and turned into a demonic tree. Is this the supreme demonic creature, the devil's claws? Isn't it too powerful? At this time, the Iron Hand Saint, Yang Yongchang, and the others who had set off first had already reached the deepest part of the canyon. They were completely shocked by the scene in front of them. Huge fissures of unknown depth appeared on the ground as if they were connected to hell. In these fissures and ravines, huge tree roots were exposed. Some of them were surrounded by black demonic chi, while others were pure white and sparkling, as if they were flickering with immortal light. However, these immortal light and auspicious chi were still being invaded by the demonic chi and gradually dimmed. It was obvious that the immortal light was at a disadvantage. It would not take too long for it to completely demonize. What was more terrifying was, everywhere one looked, there were white bones piled up like mountains. There were all kinds of bones. Some belonged to the human race, some belonged to the demon race, and some belonged to the demon race. The ground was littered with corpses. Some of the corpses were especially tall, like mountain peaks, while some of the demonic beasts were only the size of a fist. It was not an exaggeration to say that their bones were like mountains. Moreover, there were many magic treasures and weapons scattered on the ground, but they'd lost their powers a long time ago and had even rotted from the corrosion of time, transforming into scrap metal. Taking a closer look, almost all of the magical treasures and weapons were damaged. Obviously, they had been through a fierce battle. Before their master had fallen, he had fought with his life on the line. He had fought and resisted, but he still could not escape the fate of death. What happened here? Even the soul formation cultivators couldn't help but shudder at the sight of this. Even Return to Void stage saints couldn't help but shudder in fear. Let's go in. Just when everyone was terrified, the Iron Hand Saint still showed his strong side. He turned into a green light, passing through the mountain of bones and surging demon chi, flying toward the depths. Even if the immortal tree was polluted, the Dao fruit it bore would not be damaged. If you can obtain it, there's a chance that you'll be able to progress to the Dao integration stage. As for helping a soul formation stage cultivator enter the Return to Void stage, it was almost 100% guaranteed. Let's go. Yang Yongchang was not willing to be left behind. He gritted his teeth and led his sect members to follow him. The Thunder Yang sect was best at thunder techniques, which were extremely strong and had some ways to restrain fiends. Then, the major sects that were approaching the depths all chose to break in. This was because the beast tide outside had also erupted, and the risk of returning was extremely high. They might as well go in and try their luck with the so-called immortal opportunity. The closer the cultivators were to the depths, the more frightened they were. They were all extremely vigilant and uneasy. Boom! Suddenly, their eyes lit up. Everyone saw a dazzling immortal light. And for a moment, they all closed their eyes subconsciously. They saw a vast deity ground, enveloped in endless immortal light and auspicious chi, appearing in front of everyone. In the depths of the demon tide area where demon chi was rampant, it was so out of place, like a paradise. This can't be the immortal realm, right? Lei Yongchang couldn't help but murmur. The eyes of an old monster were as dreamy as a young girl's. Indeed, it gave people an illusion. It was really incredible. In the most desolate corner of the ancient demon's lock, where there was no life or spirit chi, there was a vast paradise hidden in a vast land of immortals. Everyone looked over. In the deity ground, white cranes and spirit beasts were flying in the sky, and an immortal tree towered into the sky. It was tens of thousands of feet tall, like a small world. Countless waterfalls fell from the trees like silver dragons, straight into the 9 heavens, shaking the heavens. The trunk of the tree was like a mountain, and there were all kinds of spirit herbs and spirit medicines that were shining with divine light. There was also a 1,000 feet long golden-winged rock soaring into the sky. Every time it rose and fell, it would grab a demonic beast that was 2 or 3 times larger than itself, and its cries shook the sky. Like iron chains, the aerial roots extended in all directions and pierced into the void of the earth. The demonized roots that everyone saw in the crack just now, which had both immortal chi and demon chi, came from there. The legendary, immortal tree. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim. In the past, a supreme being had planted this tree to suppress the devil's claws and stop the beast tide. In the ancient times, it was said that this immortal tree had protected the Saint Origin world like a guardian, and it had killed countless demonic beasts and mighty demons. Could it be that all the demonic beasts in the white bones outside were killed by this tree? This tree was a subimmortal tree, and it was born with a spirit. When it was first planted, it didn't need to activate its intelligence at all. Its roots, branches, and leaves could kill demonic beasts. Where is the devil's claws? Suddenly, everyone asked this question. Their divine senses surged and searched under the immortal tree. After a long time, they found something under the deity ground. It was a hand twice the size of an ordinary person, with 6 fingers and scales on the back of the hand. It was floating in the air in an inconspicuous way, as if its chi and blood had dried up. Its fingernails were like swords, and the palm was covered with dark and strange patterns. However, everyone felt its filth and evil in an instant. It was as if it had the impulse to destroy and kill everything. It was full of evil, blood, and monstrous hatred. In the primitive times, the Emperor of Demons was seriously injured by Taoist master, and he fled back to the 9 underworlds. Before he passed away, he issued the 7 great demonic curses, cursing all things. Later, his body disappeared, and only a claw was left. Anyone who got this claw would be possessed by the Emperor of Demons, and have unparalleled divine powers. Some cultivators felt the evil power, and their eyes were filled with greed. They were deeply attracted by the devil's claws. I heard that the devil's claws are among the top 10 treasures in the demonic realm, and they are the most powerful and evil. Once you get it, you won't just be able to suppress the Saint Origin world and stand at the top, but you will be able to wrestle with the top 9 immortal sects. A half-step void return half-saint also stared at the devil's claws with fanaticism, and said in a trembling voice. Chapter 2057. Damn it, we can compete with the 9 immortal sects. Doesn't that mean we can dominate the Saint Origin world? No, we can dominate all the small galaxies and continents around the Saint Origin world. Everyone's heartbeat quickened as soon as they heard this. Although the Saint Origin world was located in the central galaxy, it was still located at the edge of the galaxy. It was like a small town in a 4th or 5th tier county. It was incomparable to the core area of the 9 immortal sects, which was like an international metropolis. It was said that there had not been a Tao reunion perfected immortal in the Saint Origin world for 100,000 years. In any immortal sect, there would be several Tao reunion perfected immortals at the same time. Some of them were even related to the 9 heavens immortal world, and some sect masters were the clones of the 9 heavens immortal world. Although these were just legends and might not be true, at least it showed the strength of the immortal sects. Saints of the Void Return realm could already establish their own sects in the Saint Origin world, and they were the supreme beings of the immortal sects. But in the immortal sects, they could only be elders. Every immortal sect had hundreds or thousands of saints of the Void Return realm. If they were unlucky, they could only be hall masters. As for cultivators of the soul formation and nascent soul realm, they were like dogs, and their ranks were extremely high. But with this claw, they could compete with the 9 immortal sects and achieve great results. Who could resist such temptation? The owner of the devil's claws will be affected by the 7 curses, and his temperament will gradually change. A half-step Void Return realm saint reminded and said in a deep voice. Although you have power, you have lost your original heart, and hatred for eternity will not be quelled, and you will be haunted by the desire to destroy the world. Are you still you? I'm afraid you're just a puppet of the devil's claws. His words instantly woke everyone up. Yes, legend had it that once one became a demon, no matter how powerful he was, he would not be able to find peace and joy. He would never be satisfied, and he would always want to kill and hate. Only killing and destruction could let him breathe for a moment. But it would only be a moment. Then he would be trapped in an eternal cycle of torture, and fighting and killing would become an instinct. Avoid the devil's claws, don't get contaminated, and hide, find treasures. It looks like the devil's claws. At this moment, the Iron Hand Saint gave an order and let everyone flew toward the deity ground. As soon as they entered, everyone had astonishing gains. This was a world formed from immortal trees, containing too many treasures. Not only were there precious medicines and immortal stocks, there were even precious metals and wondrous stones, as well as even more precious and mysterious great Tao gems. Gloomy treasure wood. I'm rich. A divine transformation sect master found a piece of gloomy wood and said excitedly, "This is a necessary material for making yin-yang pills. It contains Dharma laws and is very valuable. Quick, dig it up by the roots." Is this an immortal spring? The immortal spiritual energy is so dense that it refreshes one's mind. If I drink it every day, I will definitely be able to achieve a breakthrough. Another half-saint elder of the Holy Land found an immortal spring and immediately took out a bottle to absorb it. It was like milk, like fine jade, and was translucent. It flickered with a sparkling and translucent light, causing clouds and rosy clouds to rise. Various phenomena were present, and it was obvious with a single glance that it was extraordinary. Dragon bone fish. A cultivator discovered a strange fish. It was born with 4 legs and could run as if it was flying. Its bones were ground into powder, and it was a precious medicine for treating bone injuries. Don't even think about leaving. Sigh, fellow Taoist. I was the one who discovered this splendid fur silver rat first. This was a blessed land for immortals, called the deity ground. It was formed by a deity tree stolen from the outer realm, by a mighty figure in the Middle Ages to suppress demons. After tens of thousands of years, the deity Qi and auspicious Qi filled the sky, giving birth to too many rare treasures and gems. For a moment, many cultivators no longer looked as aloof and untainted as they used to. They were like rats that burrowed into the ground and crawled into the sky, wishing that they could empty the deity ground and comb it with a fine-toothed comb. Then, while many cultivators were enjoying the joy of the harvest, they forgot about everything else. All of a sudden, the roots of a tree silently drilled out of the ground in the deity ground. The big ones were as big as dragons and pythons, and the small ones were as small as strange snakes and squids. They drilled out from the ground and hid their auras. They didn't make any sound, and they didn't even have the fluctuation of Dharma laws. They were like poisonous snakes that had spotted their prey in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Ah! A shrill scream suddenly sounded, making people's hair stand on end and their scalps go numb. Crack! A root as thick as an arm burst out from the ground and instantly straightened like a spear. It was as sharp as a sword and pierced through the cultivator's chest. Junior brother. Fellow cultivator. Many of his fellow disciples were shocked. They took out their Dharma treasures and Taoist weapons, trying to rescue him. However, they didn't have time to use them. The root drained the cultivator's essence and blood in an instant, and shrank into the ground like a spirit snake. However, in the blink of an eye, it burst out from a place 1,000 meters away and stabbed at another cultivator. Kill. This was a soul formation cultivator. He was calm in the face of danger, and had been ready for a long time. He suddenly attacked with his Taoist weapon and cut off the root. However, the broken root had already pierced through the divine treasure in his chest like an arrow. Bang! Blood gushed out from the back of this soul formation grand cultivator, and he fell to the ground on his back. What was more terrifying was that the broken root had drained all his essence and blood in a short time after piercing through his chest. Even the deity ground inside his divine treasure had turned into dust. Cough, cough. This cultivator couldn't believe all of this before he died. His eyes were still wide open, and he died with a grievance. What kind of monster is this? Some nascent soul realm cultivators with lower cultivation were horrified and were about to cry. They regretted entering this area. It's not a monster. It's just the immortal root being demonized. A mighty figure with extraordinary knowledge said with a trembling voice and a deep sense of fear. At this moment, they realized that many of the white bones they saw outside might have died in the hands of the immortal root. In the long years, the immortal tree planted by the grand cultivators tried its best to suppress and purify the devil's claws. However, this place was dark. Perhaps there were constantly fragments of the demonic realm falling in and providing energy to the devil's claws. The devil's claws were recovering and counterattacking. The immortal tree's situation became more and more difficult, as if it was a person who was exhausted. Or maybe it was contaminated by the devil's chi, and its spirituality was contaminated by the devil's chi. Or maybe it was a mixture of immortal and devil, and started to devour cultivators crazily to become its own resources. However, its spirituality was getting weaker and weaker, and its devil's chi was getting stronger and stronger until it was completely demonized. Even a veteran saint like the Iron Hand Saint had a grave expression on his face. This thing is evil. Fellow Taoists, remember to protect yourself first. Don't be greedy for cultivation materials. The demonization of the immortal tree was very rare. It combined the advantages of the immortal Tao and the devil Tao and had endless changes. Its killing power was fierce and hard to control. Even return to void stage saints had an extremely high chance of dying. Whoosh, whoosh, kill. At this moment, giants like the Iron Hand Saint started to attack. They swept out like raging waves with monstrous dharma and sacred weapons, crushing everything. Chapter 2058. Crack. Crack. One by one, the demonized deity roots were cut off, and some cultivators were saved. However, those deity roots were still very terrifying. The broken parts could still escape, burrowing into the ground and merging with the main root, or continuing to attack like arrows. Only by completely crushing the demonized immortal root would they be able to prevent it from escaping and truly kill one of its roots. Poof poof. For a while, disciples were dying in this complicated deity ground filled with fiend chi. Screams were heard one after another. Many cultivators had been sucked dry by the demonized deity roots. But the treasures were too tempting. Many of them were treasures of the deity world. Some of them could increase their cultivation level rapidly, which was equivalent to hundreds or thousands of years of hard work. Some of them could be refined into Dharma treasures, which could increase their combat power by several times. Who could resist such temptation? Many cultivators were walking on the edge of life and death, but they still persisted in searching for treasures and were unwilling to leave, like mortals snatching food from a tiger's mouth. For a time, the immortal chi in this celestial ground faded away, devil chi surged, and a ghastly killing intent filled the air. It was like an azure field, filled with killing intent, shrill screams, cries for help, and cries of joy from obtaining treasures. Most of the cultivators who had died so far were nascent soul and soul formation cultivators. Most of the void return saints were able to resist, so none of them died. Most of them were only slightly injured. The Iron Hand Saint was safe and sound. He had obtained a lot of treasures, but he still felt uneasy and his face became more and more serious. He keenly felt that the fiend chi in this deity ground was getting denser and denser, and it was getting denser as more cultivators died. I can't stay here for long. I'll search for another 15 minutes. No matter what I get, I must leave. The Iron Hand Saint set a time limit for himself. However, he had just searched for a while. All of a sudden, the entire celestial ground shook violently. Even more terrifying cracks appeared on the ground. The giant deity tree, which was as hard as treasure metal and as green as jade, had black cracks on its trunk. Rays of black fiend chi shot out of the cracks like sharp swords. Rumble. A series of deafening noises came from inside the deity tree. It was as if a star was being extinguished, emitting its final wail and sound, shocking everyone. This is the immortal tree going to collapse? Countless cultivators raised their heads, their eyes trembling uneasily. Their faces were pale, and their bodies trembled. This was a great collapse, a great omen, a great crisis. With the disappearance of the barrier blocking the devil wave, Saint Origin World was about to experience the devil wave tribulation. Whether it was the human race, the demon race, the sex, or the imperial court, all living beings would not be spared. All forces would be annihilated. At this moment, everyone's hair stood on end. Even though a portion of the immortal roots had been demonized, they did not expect the entire immortal tree to collapse. The demonic nature of the devil's claws was so strong and horrible that it could contaminate the things in the immortal realm. Rumble. With a huge explosion, the entire immortal tree collapsed. Pieces of the immortal tree's remains shot out in all directions like meteorites hitting the continent. At this moment, it was as if the world was about to be destroyed. The violent energy raged and the entire deity ground seemed to have been blown by a strong wind from the universe, destroying everything. The laws were in chaos. 3,000 great Daos and endless laws clashed with each other at this moment. The world was colorful. 7 colors entangled, pulled, entangled, tore and merged. It was magnificent, but also extremely dangerous. Many cultivators weren't even able to persist for a single flick of the finger before they were torn into pieces, crushed into powder, and incinerated into ash by the laws and grand Daos that were like violent waves. In the wind wrapped in the laws and great Daos, the cultivators were like wax in a fire. They could not withstand it. Retreat. Retreat quickly. Ominous, this place is ominous. For a moment, all the cultivators were frightened. They flew across the sky like rainbows and fled out of the deity ground as fast as they could. Poof, 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 crack. During this process, everyone was shocked to find that the immortal tree's trunk had been destroyed. Although the trunk of the immortal tree had collapsed, the demonized immortal roots were not. Instead, they became thicker and more prosperous. Like dragons and pythons, they soared into the sky and attacked the cultivators like a raging tide. More terrifyingly, the demonized immortal roots became tougher and more terrifying. At this moment, they seemed to be made of great Tao treasure metal. Even void-returned saints would have a hard time breaking them. The demonized immortal roots even began to evolve. They grew eyes, fangs, and a wide mouth. They were intelligent, like poisonous snakes and lizards. It was unbelievable and unimaginable. The cultivators who could enter the demonic tide area were all powerful and experienced. The speed of these cultivators was already very fast, but in just a few dozen seconds, under the attack of the roots and the chaotic laws of chaos, half of them had perished. They died extremely miserably. They did not die without a complete corpse. They were completely erased from this world and returned to nothingness, devoured by the demonic chi. The Iron Hand Saint and 5 or 6 saints at the Void Return and Half-Step Void Return saints escaped from the deity ground after countless dangers. Even though they were the most powerful cultivators in the Divine Origin continent, they were in a sorry state at the moment. They were covered in blood, their robes were tattered, and their magic treasures were dim. There was even demonic chi lingering around them. It's too terrifying. Their faces were pale as they looked back at the deity ground. Their hearts were still pounding, and they were trembling. At this moment, a black beam of light shot up from the bottom of the deity ground and shot toward the bull. The next moment, the vast deity ground began to shake violently and crumbled. Giant roots extended in all directions like octopuses, shaking off the rocks and soil. What's that? Everyone was stunned, their eyes filled with fear. At the top of the root, there was a strangely shaped head. The head was covered in dense scales and had 6 long curved horns. Each horn was like a sword or a saber. The face was covered in strange patterns, and the eyes were slender and long, like sharp knives, shooting out a cold and brutal demonic light. Together with the tens of thousands of roots that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, it looked like a giant octopus. The moment their eyes met, everyone's hearts tightened and their blood seemed to freeze. At that moment, everyone felt a sense of filth and evilness. A brutal murderous intent was so strong that it could kill all living things and destroy the world. That hatred was monstrous. That's the devil's claws. He has completely awakened. The Iron Hand Saint's eyes twitched. He cursed in exasperation and turned around to run. Everyone was shocked to find that the so-called head was the devil's claws, and the so-called horns were his fingers. However, the eyes and mouth had just evolved. Run! At this moment, many sect masters and emperors were running for their lives without saying anything. The devil's claws were said to be the remains of a demon god. Its power was unimaginable and could destroy all living things. Even the saints of the demon race had to bow down to it. In history, it had brought calamities to the Divine Origin continent time and time again. Even the Void Return saints would fall. Who wouldn't be afraid? Chapter 2059. But Half of the demonized immortal roots suddenly broke into pieces and dug into the ground, heading for the Six Paths Lotus Tree. In an instant, the entire critical Grand Canyon trembled, mountains collapsed, and stone peaks collapsed. There were endless rumbling sounds as if there were dragons rolling under the ground. The immortal roots that were scattered all over the Grand Canyon rushed towards the Six Paths Lotus Tree, like 10,000 carps paying homage to a dragon. In the end, they gathered within 100 miles of the Six Paths Lotus Tree. There were so many deity roots that they piled up into mountains and hills. Even Saint Tianma was shocked. Clap, clap, clap. Within 100 miles, countless immortal roots disintegrated on their own. And the ground caved in, creating huge ravines. The broken deity roots turned into endless deity spirit light that was extremely dazzling and surrounded the Six Paths Lotus Tree and Jiangtian. Bathed in endless immortal light, the Six Paths Lotus Tree continued to grow taller, like bamboo shoots after a rain, growing into a towering tree at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Six Paths Lotus trees bloomed one after another. Their fragrance covered the entire area and made everyone feel like they were on cloud nine. In the depths of the demonic wave area, the devil's claws seemed to be able to see through the entire canyon. He shouted, "These old roots are so stubborn. They're so stubborn that they're willing to destroy themselves to become the food of the Six Paths Lotus Tree. Hey, there's a deity-grade nascent soul here. It's definitely delicious and nutritious." Countless roots danced and his eyes were cold as he looked in the direction of Jiangtian. Do you think you can run away? Then I'll devour the Six Paths Lotus Tree and demonize. In the dragon transformation pool, deity light shot into the sky. The deity trees in the demonic wave area collapsed, and the deity roots gathered at the Six Paths Lotus Tree. The deity spirit chi was so dense that it was intoxicating. It was even going to crush the dragon transformation pool. Many people sucked in cold breaths. The deity spirit chi was too dense. In the past, a drop of it could cause a huge battle and make the cultivators fight. And now there was a sea of them here, being used by Jiangtian's people. How great was this opportunity? From ancient times until now, only a few people had ever obtained it. Saint Tianma was so shocked that she was speechless. She respected Jiangtian from the bottom of her heart. All of these developments were exactly as he had expected. He was simply a clairvoyant who had taken every conceivable possibility into account. However, Saint Tianma was also shocked and uneasy as she scanned her surroundings warily. Now that the Six Paths Lotus Tree had manifested, it would definitely attract the attention of many powerful cultivators, and even sages. At this moment, everyone realized that the demonization of the immortal root was extremely dangerous, and the greatest opportunity lay within the Six Paths Lotus Tree. Therefore, everyone retreated from the No Man's area and the Demon Tide area, arriving at the border. This included Lian Huahan. It was unknown how many cultivators were hiding within a few hundred li of the Six Paths Lotus Tree, watching, coveting, and ready to make a move. The Six Paths Lotus Tree was an item of the deity realm. Who wouldn't want it? Putting aside the fact that Jiangtian now had so many of them, just a single branch would be able to cause the saints to fight until the mountains and earth crumbled, the sun and moon turned upside down, blood flowed, corpses piled up into mountains, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. Ding! Suddenly, a dragon's roar came from the sky. In the billowing demonic chi, someone sat high in the sky, playing a guqin and playing a mysterious tune. At first, it was drizzling like spring rain, but suddenly, it was like a powerful army, with weapons and spears roaring. The killing intent was like a flood pouring down from the nine heavens. It carried a world-destroying aura as it crazily charged towards Jiangtian. Even with Saint Tianma's protection and the many elites from the Eastern Kingdom and Luoying sect's protection, there were still people who couldn't resist and attacked. After all, the Six Paths Lotus Tree was too tempting. Who wouldn't be jealous of an opportunity that only appeared once in 100,000 years? The guqin was a song called the Evil Wind. When the billowing demonic music entered one's ears, it could mess with one's mind and cause one to fall into a frenzy. It was clear that the mighty figure who attacked in secret was an expert in music. He wanted Jiangtian to fall into chi deviation, so that he would be defeated without bloodshed. This, Saint Qianma's expression was flustered and she was helpless. Initially, she was rather proud and thought that she could definitely protect Jiang Haotian with her cultivation strength. However, she did not expect the first enemy to attack in secret to be so difficult to deal with. Suddenly, anger, menacing, fear and confusion appeared on Jiang Tian's initially calm face. Clearly, he had been disturbed by the Guqin music. She wanted to charge into the skies and destroy the mastermind. However, she was worried that Jiang Tian would have no one to protect him. "Senior, let me do it." Eldest Princess Mou summoned a Guqin and let it float in front of her. She pressed the strings with both hands and played at the same time. Above the 9 heavens, a clear and loud cry sounded. It was so beautiful that it was difficult to describe. Even if 100 birds sang together, it would be difficult to compare to it. 12 divine sounds of Longhuan. Boundless chant. With the heart as the Guqin and the 7 emotions as the strings, one played with true intent to produce a silent immortal sound that resonated with the other party's heart. At that moment, Jiang Tian's expression returned to calmness. At this moment, he was immersed in breaking through once more. His heart was clear and his mind was calm. External fiends and evil thoughts could not enter, and his worries were purged. Above the skies, in the depths of the fiend qi, the Guqin snapped and the figure shattered into pieces, falling into the void as well. If that person wasn't affected by the fiend qi, he should be at void reversion cultivation realm, right? To think that he would be killed by eldest princess Mou in a single strike. Dongfang Mou is way too powerful. Many cultivators were shocked and shuddered. Eldest princess Mou's Guqin music was murderous, shattering laws and breaking great daos. She had the power of a void reversion saint. It's an essence spirit puppet and not a real person. Eldest Princess Mou's face was pale. The consumption of the attack earlier on was no small matter, and this was only a puppet. Saint Qianma could sense it as well. The strength of the true body of this puppet was probably at the level of the sect master of a major sect. A hint of worry appeared in her eyes. However, she still shook her sleeves and scanned her surroundings, shouting coldly, "I'm here to protect you. I am standing guard for fellow Taoist. If anyone dares to take a step forward, they will be destroyed." There was silence all around. No one said a word. Within 100 miles, there was no one else apart from the Eastern Empire and the Luoying sect. No one invaded rashly either. However, that did not mean that Jiang Tian was safe. However, 100 miles away, countless mighty figures were hiding in the dark of the fiend qi, coveting and spying with hostility. Endless killing intent could be seen from time to time. Those hidden people were like hibernating poisonous snakes, waiting for the moment their prey slacked off before they would immediately erupt and kill Jiang Tian cruelly. Although Dongfang Mou's consumption was not small, he still insisted on playing the 12 divine sounds of Longhuan, Central Pine Illumination, overlooking the 9 heavens, and other chapters. In the dragon transformation pool, Jiang Tian sat motionlessly. His aura was indistinct, like an old monk in meditation, and his Tao heart was calm. At this moment, the sound of the zither flowed like a gurgling spring. It flowed past the pure white stones like a full moon hanging in the middle of the pine forest. The cool breeze blew gently, blowing the pine trees up and down. It also blew into Jiang Tian's heart. It allowed him to immerse himself better in his own path. His embryonic form as a god reflected nature, and deepened the connection of the great Tao of heaven and earth, connecting the endless laws of the 3 realms. Chapter 2060. Many 6-path lotus flowers floated around Jiang Tian, like celestial flowers with Tao rhythms. The immortal flowers connected with the great Tao of heaven and earth, and gathered the immortal spirit qi of the dragon transformation pool. They washed Jiang Tian's body, nourished his nascent soul, and transformed it into a god, paving the way for the formation of the divine treasure. At this moment, beams of immortal light surrounded him and spirit qi flowed on every inch of his skin. This was not an ordinary essence, but the essence of the 6-path lotus tree. All the pores on his body opened, and the immortal spirit qi turned into light that kept going in and out. His organs and bones were dyed with a layer of dazzling light. Soon, A divine treasure that was like an immortal palace was finally formed. At this moment, the great Tao heavenly sound resounded in the sky and on the ground like a huge bell. People couldn't understand what it meant, but they could feel a vast divine sound reverberating, like the evening drum and morning bell. It was so loud that it made people alert and enlightened. At this moment, everyone looked at Jiang Tian in shock. Huanglinger and the others all had hopeful looks on their faces. Tonight, perhaps a supreme giant would come into being. Whether the fish could transform into a dragon or not would be revealed tonight. Once he took a step forward, the sea and sky would be blocked and the abyss would be thousands of feet deep. It's terrifying. He's just a nascent soul cultivator, and I feel that he has the power to crush a sage. His physique is terrifying. When he's in seclusion, there will be the sound of the great Tao. This is extremely rare, but if there are no accidents, those who have such a phenomenon will become a supreme expert. But this immortal flower tree can make him grow so quickly. It's indeed priceless. I guess more and more sages can't sit still. Not all the cultivators outside would make a move. Many overlords didn't have the strength to make a move even if they wanted it. After all, Saint Qianma was protecting him. But they guessed that many sages would make a move. Firstly, the immortal opportunity was tempting. Secondly, Jiang Tian's growth was too terrifying. Once he rose, he would become their great enemy. All of a sudden. Screech. A strange-looking saint weapon suddenly appeared above the Six Paths lotus tree. It shone with golden light, had 2 wings, and was as sharp as an eagle's beak. No one had ever seen this saint weapon before. It was extremely unfamiliar to them. However, just by looking at its vast magic power and the sonorous sound of the great Tao, one could tell that this was a genuine holy weapon. Only a true return to void stage sage could control it. Qila. Bang. This saint weapon expanded in the air, instantly transforming into a golden-winged great prong. As if cast from precious gold. It was dazzling and resplendent. It spread its wings and swooped down towards Jiang Tian. Wind and thunder surged and its aura shook the heavens. Everyone's heart shrank. It was clear that another saint could no longer sit still. He wanted to kill Jiang Tian and snatch the great fortune of the Six Paths lotus tree. However, he was unwilling to reveal his identity and use a magical equipment that he had never seen before to kill Jiang Tian. Little rascal, hiding your head but showing your tail. Saint Qianma looked into the sky with a deep gaze. Her robes fluttered and her robes fluttered. With a soft holler, the heavens shook and the earth shook, as though the world was about to collapse. The next moment, she reached out with her right hand, and it expanded like a mountain, grabbing towards the golden-winged great pung in the sky. Many cultivators were stunned. Saint Qianma had always treated others generously, and was calm at the void-pierce stage, causing others to forget about her terrifying strength. Her attack was truly terrifying. She treated the heavens and earth as though they were in her palms. Screech. The golden-winged great pung shrieked, and reverted to its true form in the hands of Saint Qianma before falling rapidly. Cracks appeared on its body, and its magic power was almost destroyed. With its remaining magic power, it dashed out of the valley like a stray dog and disappeared into the surging fiend qi in the blink of an eye. Boom, boom, boom. Killing intent surged like a tide and arrived instantly. Suddenly, thousands of sword beams arrived and appeared around the dragon transformation pool. Another saint-level expert had made his move. They wanted to kill Jiang Tian. This time round, killing intent filled the skies and countless people attacked. The sword beams were like a tide, and this was only the first wave. Immediately after, a huge seal appeared out of thin air, and turned into a green mountain that smashed down. Apart from that, there were all sorts of phenomena. Tut! Saint Qianma shouted and spat out a wooden sword. It was filled with vitality and laws entwined around it. She swept through the surroundings, and the sword slashed everything. The green wooden sword repelled all the attacks. Crack! Crack! All sorts of Dharma treasures were shattered and the phenomena were destroyed, turning into green smoke and ashes. Apart from sacred weapons, almost nothing could escape from her wooden sword. Saint Qianma burned her divine essence, and used all her cultivation to protect Jiang Tian. She used all her strength and burned her divine essence blood to repel the attacks. In an instant, a group of people were shocked. Saint Qianma scanned the surroundings and said in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoists, you are all void reversion saints, the pillars of this mainland. You are the last hope and trump card of the people. It is your responsibility to protect your land. Right now the immortal tree is collapsing and the immortal root is demonized. The demon wave is coming and everyone should head to the depths of the valley to work together to resist the demon wave and protect the people. Why are you still here and fighting with us?" The surroundings were silent. Suddenly, a voice drifted in and out of the blue. Sometimes it was to the left, sometimes it was to the right, sometimes it was to the front, and sometimes it was to the back. "Fellow Taoist Qianma, what you said is nonsense. The saints are indeed the pillars of this mainland. It is their responsibility to protect their land, but they also have to cultivate and improve." How did the saints come about? They reached the void reversion realm by killing, robbing and fighting. It's not something that can be achieved with the approval of the people. The immortal chi of the Six Paths Lotus Tree is so good. It only appears once every 10,000 years. Why would we give it up? Besides, you asked us to fight against the demon wave. Why don't you go? You seem to have broken through 2 levels after enjoying the immortal chi. We haven't. Besides, the immortal tree is an ownerless item. Or rather, it belongs to the entire mainland. Why should that kid use it first? The last question seemed to be heard from all directions. Saint Qianma said with a serious expression, "I'm not here to absorb the immortal chi. I'm here to protect fellow Taoist Jiang." She did everything for the sake of justice, but no one believed her. Or even if they believed her, they had to take the side of justice and kill Jiang Tian by force. Saint Qianma tried to persuade her. The demon wave is terrifying. The entire mainland is in danger. This fellow Taoist has an extraordinary foundation and rich experience. As soon as he reached the soul formation realm, his strength is much stronger than ordinary saints. He may be the only hope to fight against the demon wave. After Saint Qianma said that, there was silence again. Suddenly, the ethereal voice came again. "Qianma, no matter how nice your words are, I won't believe you. Hurry up and get out of the way. We the 13 sages will kill this unworthy brat and split this immortal destiny equally. If you know what's good for you and back off in time and don't fight against us, we'll give you a share of the immortal opportunity." This person showed his trump card. The 13 void reversion saints teamed up to kill Jiang Tian and snatch the immortal opportunity. It was really terrifying. Even Lian Huahun had a look of terror on her face as she sent a voice transmission with her divine sense. "Senior Qianma, it's not worth offending so many void reversion saints for a mere quasi-soul formation realm cultivator. Maybe the entire Luoying sect will be affected." Chapter 2061. Lian Huahun's worries weren't unfounded. Even the entire Luoying sect didn't have that many void return saints. Theoretically speaking, the saints present could even level the entire Luoying sect to the ground. However, Saint Qianma didn't reply to her. Her eyes were extremely firm as she said angrily, "I'm here and I won't back down. If you want to snatch the immortal opportunity, you'll have to do it over my dead body." Whoosh. Suddenly, the sky shook like a piece of cloth. An overlord crossed the sky and appeared beside Jiang Tian and Saint Qianma. He attacked fiercely and his murderous intent surged like a tide, as if an ancient beast had attacked. Buzz. The earth trembled and the sky trembled. The space was torn apart and ripples appeared. This saint held a saint weapon that had never been seen before. He interweaved the patterns of Tao and logos and pounced towards Saint Qianma. Clang. As soon as the attack was unleashed, the surrounding space was instantly annihilated and shrunk. This man was wearing a mask and his fighting spirit was soaring. His blood chi was like a dragon and he was extremely powerful. He was definitely a master of the void return realm. Mou, Lin Yang, and the others gasped at the same time and felt as if they had fallen into the abyss. This was the first time a void return cultivator had shown himself, and he was very straightforward. "Senior, watch out." Everyone shouted as they broke out in cold sweat for Saint Qianma. "Coward, you don't dare to show your true face. You finally understand that your actions can't be exposed. Saint Qianma's eyes were indifferent and her snow-white sleeves fluttered. Her Tao was natural, and she was one with the heavens, like an immortal walking in the mortal world. She formed a hand seal with her right hand and shook it in the sky. Boom. In the sky, numerous runes appeared out of thin air around the handprint. They seemed to be carved from green jade, simple and natural. They contained wood element aura and dense vitality. It was as if they contained a small world, and they formed a protective barrier that protected Jiangtian. It was both offensive and defensive as it pushed outwards. Boom. With a shake, the space collapsed and an extremely vast energy surged wildly. Many cultivators within a 100-mile radius were thrown off their feet. Even soul formation cultivators were frightened as they felt the peerless pressure. On the ground, a 10-mile-long crack appeared where the two collided. It was like the Grand Canyon of East Africa. It was a mess. However, behind Jiangtian, it was like a pure land, not affected in the slightest. Puff. The return to Void Stage Saint's holy weapon was shattered, and he was blasted back with blood gushing from his mouth. Inside his body, the inner world collapsed with a loud rumble. The void no longer existed, and only the divine treasures were left. His cultivation base dropped from the return to void stage to the soul formation stage after being struck by the Qianma seal. Humph. Qianma, I'll remember this. That person roared, filled with boundless hatred. Then he flew into the distance, directly leaving the liminal canyon. Looking at Saint Qianma, she was perfectly fine. She didn't even pant and was extremely calm. I've already shown mercy. Everyone was shocked beyond belief. Saint Qianma was too strong. As expected of a mighty figure, he was able to instantly degrade another return to void stage holy man's cultivation base by a major rank. Lin Yang and Fang Goyu both had reverence on their faces. They were full of confidence in Saint Qianma. However, eldest Princess Mou was still worried. Senior Qianma, please don't show mercy. Only by killing him directly can we intimidate these rascals. Senior Qianma had only defeated one return to void stage holy man. There were still many left. Clang. Suddenly, a large hand reached out from the void. It was simple and unadorned. There wasn't much energy fluctuation, but it gave people a feeling that it could pluck the stars and grab the moon. The fingerprints were like the Milky Way, and the fingers were like heavenly pillars. Senior, how could you? Saint Qianma's eyes were filled with shock as she shouted. It was obvious that she had already recognized the person who attacked. This person should be very senior. He was definitely a living fossil that wouldn't die. Qianma, this old man only has 10 years left to live. Only by obtaining the immortal fate can he extend his life. I really have no choice. The voice of this living fossil was desolate and carried a deep sorrow, causing people to feel the sorrow of a fox mourning the death of a rabbit, and the death of its kind. Even return to void stage holy men usually only had a few thousand years of lifespan. If they were lucky or used secret techniques to extend their lives, they might be able to live for 10,000 years. However, they couldn't live as long as the heavens and would eventually die. Although the living fossil sounded helpless, his attack was merciless. His large hand covered the sky and grabbed towards Jiang Tian like an eagle hunting a rabbit. Senior, he's the only hope to resist the demon surge. Saint Qianma's eyes were anxious. She gritted her teeth and suddenly soared into the sky. Like a phoenix dancing in the 9 heavens, she raised her sword towards the sky as if she could shatter the stars and pierce the sun. Boom. The sky seemed to have collapsed. The giant hand shattered into pieces and turned into ashes instantly. However, Saint Qianma crashed into the ground like a meteor, creating a deep pit. Senior Qianma. Master. Elder. A wave of exclamations of surprise rose and fell, and they carried regret and concern. Everyone looked at the scene in the deep pit in shock. Even someone as powerful as Saint Qianma was injured. Her Taoist robe was tattered, revealing a large area of her snow-white skin. Her skin was covered with bloodstains and blood kept oozing out of her mouth. Lian Huahan also saw that her inner world was showing signs of collapse. Senior Qianma, why do you have to do this? Huanglinger, Hua Xiangrong, Mou Linyang, and the others quickly flew over and protected Jiang Tian and Saint Qianma like a human wall. This is troublesome. At this moment, everyone looked at the sky with their scalps tingling. This old fart could even injure Saint Qianma. His strength was as terrifying as a dragon. At this moment, an old man stepped on the air and landed steadily in front of Saint Qianma. He looked old, and was wearing an old green robe. His waist was hunched and he had chicken skin and a crane head. His eyes were cloudy and he exuded an aura of declining vitality. He panted with every step he took as if he would die soon. He looked at the 6 Paths lotus tree and Jiang Tian. His eyes flashed with greed as if they were all food. Kill. Feeling the murderous intent towards the old man, Mou and the others looked at each other and gritted their teeth. They were about to fly into the air and stop the old man. No. You are no match for him. Saint Qianma struggled to stand up. Endless sadness and despair appeared at the corner of her mouth. Do you know who he is? Xie Zhangying. As soon as she said that, everyone was stunned. Even Lian Huahan and Mou's divine soul trembled. It's him. Isn't it rumored that he went to the 9 major celestial sects in the core starfield to look for opportunities? How? There are also rumors that he has passed the tribulation and become an immortal. Many people were discussing and whispering to each other. Xie Zhangying. She was a legendary figure, the patriarch of the patriarchs, the saint of the saints. She was once the teacher of Dongfang Run, the founding emperor of the Eastern Empire. She had also taught several generations of 9 mysteries sects patriarchs. Chapter 2062. In that era, Xie Zhangying was recognized as the #1 genius. He had the sacred body of the human race, and was the most powerful person in the divine continent. Even the alchemy sage Gu He, the ancient medicine hall's master, had to admit defeat when he met him. Haha, genius. Sacred body. In the central galaxy and the 9 major celestial sects, sacred bodies are just trash. He shook his head and sighed. His smile was bitter, and his eyes were red as if tears were about to fall. When I went in, I didn't even have the chance to be a servant. My sky was broken and it took me 100 years to recover my cultivation. It was obvious that he had gone to the core of the galaxy to make a name for himself in the 9 major celestial sects, but he had failed. It sounded simple, but everyone was shocked and their hearts palpitated. This revealed a terrifying piece of information. The geniuses of Saint Origin World, the overlords of Saint Origin World, had run into obstacles time and time again in the central galaxy. They had suffered countless setbacks and even broken through the void sky. The 9 major celestial sects were really high up and looked down on the other worlds. People sighed. Since ancient times, beauties would lament that heroes were not allowed to see old age. Xie Zhangying's life was full of troubles. He was no longer as handsome as he used to be. All he had was endless sadness. In fact, even the return to void stage saints who were hiding in the shadows were struck by shock and sorrow. Thinking back to 4,000 years ago, he was handsome and looked down on the world. Looking at him now, he was like a withered piece of wood, thin and weak, about to rot. How sad was this? A beauty at the end of his life and a hero at the end of his life were the most helpless sorrows in the world. He was a heaven-warping genius with a world-shocking appearance. He was originally the pride of his generation. Yet he ended up in such a state. It made one sigh and shed tears. In an instant, a sense of urgency rose in their hearts. They grieved for the death of their own kind. Even Xie Zhangying was about to die. Their talents were not even as good as Xie Zhangying's. Wouldn't they be even more lonely and sad in their later years? Senior, it's natural to be born, grow old, get sick, and die. There's a time when a person's strength is limited. Since you can't fight against it, you should follow the heavenly Tao. Saint Qianma said one last time. It wasn't that she was afraid of death, but once she died, no one would be able to protect Jiang Tian. If she could avoid fighting, she would. Xie Zhangying looked at him with disdain and said coldly, "Mediocre. Qianma, you are too mediocre. A few thousand years ago, I discovered that you were very mediocre. Cultivation has always been about using the heavenly Tao, fighting against the heavenly Tao, and fighting against the heavenly Tao. If I had complied with the mandate of heaven earlier, Why would I even bother to cultivate? Saint Qianma said. Since Senior wants to fight back, why did you withdraw from the 9 sects? Why don't you go and fight for it? Xie Zhangying stared blankly for a moment. Her eyes seemed to flash with thousands of words, but she suddenly smiled and coughed. Ah, you little girl, you're quite clever. You are stalling for time. Unfortunately, the old man won't fall for it. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and grabbed at Jiang Tian. Kill. Saint Qianma suddenly attacked and pointed a finger at Xie Changjing. Kill. Moreover, the hundreds of disciples led by Hua Xiangrong had already lined up behind Saint Qianma. They shouted in unison, and the magic power in their bodies surged, sweeping across the sky like rivers returning to the sea, majestically focusing on Saint Qianma. With the support of the battle formation and the magic power of hundreds of disciples, Saint Qianma's cultivation seemed to be rising steadily, reaching an unprecedented height. That finger was extremely powerful, as if it could shatter the sun and the moon, and break the sky. Scram! Xie Zhangying waved her hand and flung her sleeve. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering sound rang out, as if mountains and rivers were gushing out from under her sleeve. The abundant and irresistible power crushed the void, shattering the 3,000 great Taoists and obliterating the endless laws. Bang, bang, bang. In the sky, many disciples of Luoying's sect flew out crazily and exploded in midair. Under Xie Zhangying's attack, these spirit transformation realm and elite disciples were like eggs under a 1,000-kilogram boulder. They didn't even last for a second before their corporeal bodies and spirit embryo divine treasures exploded into a mist of blood. As for their magical treasures, they were all shattered into pieces. Only Saint Qianma was left, spitting out blood as she flew out. Huang Linger hugged her and landed on the ground. So terrifying. She is indeed an unparalleled giant who has been famous for thousands of years. At this moment, everyone exclaimed. Everyone was dumbfounded and shocked. Many people's teeth were chattering and they couldn't say a word. Although Xie Zhangying was a void-returned saint, it was too shocking for her to crush soul formation grand cultivators like killing ants. The key was that she was already at the end of her life and her corporeal body was about to rot. She didn't have much energy, and yet she was still able to beat Saint Qianma so badly. At this moment, the foundation of her divine treasure was about to be destroyed. Next, her palace would collapse and her divine treasure would be damaged. She would be at the mercy of others. Senior Xie, you are so ruthless. They are all extraordinary and will be the pillars of the continent in the future. The demon tide is coming and we still need them to fight. Seeing so many of her beloved disciples die, Saint Qianma felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. She let out a shrill cry and tears of blood flowed from her beautiful eyes. Blood foam kept seeping out of her mouth. As soon as she finished speaking, suddenly, there was a rumbling sound. There was another earth-shattering explosion in the direction of the demon tide. Dark fiend qi shot up to the sky. An extremely cruel, evil, filthy and ferocious emotion swept over like a raging wave. The demon tide is really coming. I received a message saying that the deity tree in the demon tide area has collapsed. It has completely collapsed. Ah. Without the deity tree's suppression and obstruction, the demon tide will be unstoppable. Everyone was alarmed, feeling as if an extremely terrifying existence was awakening and surging over. After listening for a while, Xie Zhangying shook her head and said indifferently, "They are only the pillars of the continent in the future. Even if you, Saint Qianma, are the pillars of the continent now, I will still kill you. Nobody can stop me from moving forward. So what if there is a demon tide? Compared to the 9 celestial sects, the Saint Origin continent is just a muddy pond with a few rotten fish and shrimps. If they die, they die. There is nothing to feel sorry about." Xie Zhangying was extremely indifferent to her own kind. She only wanted to become stronger. After seeing the outside world, her Taoist heart was hurt, and she was in extreme self-denial. She didn't even care about her own race. The Eastern Empire can't stay out of this. Protect Senior. Boom. Elder Princess Mou shouted and shot up to the sky, blocking in front of Xie Zhangying. Her divine treasures shone brightly and roared. A carefully made guqin was placed in front of her. Waves of sound waves condensed on the strings, ready to be released. Her face was full of determination. She had completely thrown caution to the wind. Xie Zhangying was the master of the founding emperor, Dongfang Run. Strictly speaking, she was also the ancestral patriarch of the Dongfang family. I'll go too. Lin Yang also shot up to the sky. Then Fang Goyu, Lin Hanqing, Fang Jinlong, and even the youthful-looking disciples of Starfire Academy, and the great sects of the Eastern Empire all gritted their teeth and blocked Xie Zhangying's path. Some were determined, some were helpless, and some were fearful. All of them were indomitable gods that roared furiously, or their nascent souls howled. And they each spread out their own domains and forbidden regions. They interweaved the markings of the Taoan principles, and they lay across the sky and firmly protected Jiang Tian behind them. All of them had determined eyes and were ready to die. For a moment, their power covered the sky and approached Xie Zhangying. Chapter 2063. Sai, in front of Xie Zhangying, the cultivators of the Eastern Empire are just ants. Many cultivators with profound Tao side. The combined strength of eldest Princess Mou and the others was only comparable to Saint Qianma, and was even slightly inferior. How could they fight against Xie Zhangying? However, their resoluteness, that type of solemn and stirring atmosphere infected the crowd, making them feel sorrowful. This was the last barrier to protect Jiang Tian. Everyone's fighting spirit was boiling. However, Xie Zhangying sneered and pressed forward unhurriedly like a mountain with a heavy aura. Many of you are the descendants and subjects of Dongfang Run. Hurry up and retreat. I won't kill you. Xie Zhangying's voice was old, and he seemed to be panting. However, he had a monstrous aura that truly looked down on the world and regarded the common people as ants and dust. Senior, we have no other choice. We swear that we won't take a step back. Yes. Eldest Princess Mou's expression was firm, and her beautiful eyes emitted an incomparably cold light. Lin Yang, Fang Goyu, and the others all revealed fear, but they gritted their teeth and persevered. At this moment, Xie Zhangying was not demonized, but what was the difference between him and a demon? He only had killing intent and ignored everything. He would rather destroy the common people to fight for a chance of survival. At that moment, there was silence in the sky and on the ground. Everyone held their breaths and waited for the outcome of this battle. Saint Qianma gritted his teeth and stared at Xie Zhangying nervously. Huang Linger's palms were drenched in cold sweat. Mou and the others were also fighting to the death. Zai, you forced me to do this. It's not my fault. Xie Zhangying approached and was about to kill. Suddenly, he looked at Jiang Tian, his eyes flashing with boundless shock. He's going to break the shackles? In the dragon pool. The lotus petals drifted and were stained with Jiang Tian's blood qi, reflecting a treasure light and revealing a magnificent crimson color. It was like a rain of tears, sad and beautiful. Jiang Tian sat under the Six Paths lotus tree like a Buddha under the Bodhi tree, a Tao sovereign under the starry sky. His eyes were closed and he didn't move at all. Only the divine treasures emitted a gentle and sacred light that made everything around him pale in comparison. This was an eternal scene. So many years had passed, and the river of time had washed away all grudges and grievances. However, this scene would never fade from people's minds. It would forever be imprinted in their hearts. Around him, a murderous aura surged, blood flowed everywhere, and severed limbs were strewn all over the place. It was like a scene of Azura in the mortal world. However, the dragon transformation pool was very calm. Only the sound of falling flowers and flowing tree sap could be heard, sparkling as they drifted down piece by piece. A sweet fragrance wafted in all directions, releasing immortal spiritual energy. In that area, immortal light and auspicious colors pervaded the air, soaking Jiang Tian. Falling petals fell on Jiang Tian's body, as if they were bestowed by the immortal world. Crack, crack. Suddenly, the sound of intense friction rang out from Jiang Tian's body. It was like the sound of metal rubbing against each other. It was extremely ear-piercing, and caused one's heart to palpitate. What's that? Suddenly, someone exclaimed. Everyone looked over. At this moment, Everyone saw that there were indeed countless divine chains of laws crisscrossing inside and outside of Jiang Tian's body. They extended to the endless void and pierced into the ground. Not only were there the chains of the Great Path, but there were also the bonds of karma that firmly bound him like ropes. These chains of laws, the chains of the Great Path and the ropes of karma were filled with the aura of the world, as if they were punishing him on behalf of the heavens. Each of them was formed by countless runes, as if they were indestructible and deeply rooted in the depths of his blood. They moved freely in his divine treasures, penetrated his shoulder blades and organs, and spread to the world, locking him tightly and preventing him from building his divine treasures and evolving his nascent soul into a god. Rumor has it that the mortal world of cultivation was once cursed by the heavens, and carries the chains of the Great Path and the ropes of karma. Therefore mortals, including the immortal cultivators among them, are weak compared to the immortal world and the divine world. They don't have the talent to become immortals. Everyone discussed in shock. This was the first time they had seen the suppression of the Great Path in a mortal's body. Looking at the divine chains that contained endless majesty, everyone almost knelt down and worshipped them. However, there were also void-returned saints hiding in the dark who gasped and said, "In the entire divine origin world, no one in the last 100,000 years who broke through to the soul formation realm showed the innate shackles of the Great Path that bound mortals. But this guy did, which means that he's truly going to break free from the mortal world." What level of semi-god realm was he at? He's at least at the immortal soul formation realm, or even higher. These were all people with discerning eyes, rich in experience, eyes like torches, seeing how extraordinary Jiang Tian was. Once Jiang Tian broke free from the shackles and entered the soul formation realm, he would be an unprecedented soul formation overlord, who could look down on the world and dominate the world. Bang! 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 The sound of chains breaking was heard. A vast aura gushed out of Jiang Tian's body and shot into the sky. At this moment, Jiang Tian had broken the shackles and immediately soared into the sky like a dragon. Many people were even more shocked and disgusted. He broke the innate shackles and is about to reach the soul formation realm. Very few people can truly break the shackles. How many times has this sound been heard since the beginning of time? In the blink of an eye. All these changes and Jiang Tian's changes happened in a few seconds. Seeing this, the greed in Xie Zhangying's eyes became even stronger. This was the result of the sap and deity light in the dragon transformation pool. But at this moment, Jiang Tian's god and divine treasures hadn't taken shape yet, so it was still the best time to attack. Boom! Xie Zhangying couldn't wait to attack. She reached out her hand and grabbed at Jiang Tian like a dragon's claw. Kill! At this moment, Qian Mo, Mou and the others all rushed to the sky and attacked Xie Zhangying. Get out of my way! Xie Zhangying didn't show any mercy at all. She pushed her palm out like a mountain, and many of the Eastern Empire's experts were all sent flying. Many people exploded in the sky and turned into ashes. Although Lin Yang, Mou and the others didn't die, they were also heavily injured. Saint Qianmo, who bore the brunt of the attack, was sent flying more than 100 miles. After defeating everyone, Xie Zhangying didn't stop at all, and continued to close in on Jiang Tian. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. She wanted to kill Jiang Tian, and take the Six Paths Lotus Tree for herself. She wanted to snatch the immortal fate and continue her path, and extend her lifespan. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Fang Guoyu held Lin Yang's hand tightly and broke out in cold sweat. Fang Jinlong and Lin Hanqing, the two good friends, were covered in blood and supported each other. They looked at each other anxiously. Saint Qianmo clenched her teeth and tried to use her dermic powers to fight again. Huang Linger and Mou both attacked Saint Qianmo with their swords. Jiang Tian was very close and it seemed like it was too late. At this moment, bang! In the sky, it was as if above the 9 heavens, above the immortal world, the most ancient domain of the gods burst out with a golden light. It was as if Hungmeng was opened up and the universe was born. That golden light was so magnificent, so bright and so dazzling. It was as if a star field had been ignited and could illuminate the universe. It was as if it could light up the 9 hells. At that moment, The endless demonic fog in the entire critical Grand Canyon dissipated. Countless demonic creatures and generals drilled into the demonic soil with fear. The deep space of hundreds of thousands of miles was illuminated with incomparable transparency, and no corner could be hidden. At that moment, the sound of the great Tao came from above the 9 heavens and resounded between heaven and earth, suppressing all other sounds. The divine sound was boundless, divine, lofty, boundless, and tangible. It was like a rainbow-colored ripple that could be clearly seen. It was extremely dazzling and possessed an indescribable charm as it reverberated through the entire Great Canyon. Chapter 2064. Oh my God, this is the prelude to becoming a god. Thousands of great Taoists in the 9 heavens god realm are resonating with his Taoist heart. Someone sensed the mystery and realized what kind of power this was. He couldn't help but exclaim, "How is this possible? How many times has the prelude to becoming a god sounded since ancient times?" This song isn't completely related to cultivation. It's a reflection of one's state of mind, understanding of Taoism, and understanding of the world of mortals. Legend has it that the prelude to becoming a god is only the beginning. If the real divine song is derived, one can obtain power close to that of a god. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect Jiang Tian to be so talented that he could comprehend the prelude to becoming a god. Although it had nothing to do with cultivation, and was only a sublimation of one's state of mind, the greatest potential of a cultivator was in his heart. One day, he might be able to illuminate the world. "Old man, how dare you act tough in front of me? Do you want to die?" At this moment, Jiang Tian suddenly stood up and slapped down with his palm. It was as if Mount Tai was crashing down. You. According to Xie Zhangying's deduction, it would take some time for Jiang Tian to reach the soul formation stage. She didn't expect Jiang Tian to suddenly break through and attack her. She was caught off guard and was dumbfounded. Under Jiang Tian's palm, Xie Zhangying couldn't resist at all. Her legs gave out, and she fell to the ground like a toad. The palm continued to press down. Clang! The thick demonic soil sank 5 kilometers, forming a giant palm-shaped well with a radius of 3 kilometers. At the bottom of the well was Xie Zhangying, who was almost crushed. Her body was covered in blood, her bones were broken, and her internal organs were almost exposed. This time, everyone was shocked. "Damn, how is this possible? That's Xie Zhangying." Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. This palm almost smashed the peerless genius Xie Zhangying, who was considered the most powerful saint on this continent, into meat paste. He broke through. Cultivator Jiang broke through. The cultivators of the Eastern Empire were silent at first, then burst into cheers. Mou, Lin Yang, and the others all revealed surprised and shocked expressions. Jiang Tian's breakthrough was too fast, and once he made a move, he was too powerful. Even Xie Zhangying had been suppressed by a single palm. This was an absolute power that could crush all of the return to void stage saints. Fellow Taoist. Saint Qianma looked over excitedly, and revealed a gratified expression. At this time, Jiang Tian's face was as chiseled as a knife, and he was as perfect as a true god. His white robe fluttered in the wind, and he was otherworldly. He was like a true god who looked down on the myriad worlds with disdain. For a moment, everyone felt a severe mental pressure, as if they were being stared at by a primordial ferocious beast, and they felt uncomfortable all over. Seeing how powerful Jiang Tian was, Lian Huahuan's beautiful eyes glowed with extraordinary splendor. It was as if she had seen a rare treasure, an idol that fans admired. Compared to Jiang Tian, the successors of the sacred grounds and divine sects in Saint Origin world were not even worth mentioning. He was only at the soul formation stage, but he could defeat the veteran void return saints and suppress the geniuses of the previous generation. How heaven-defying was this? It was hard to find one in 100,000 years. As a peerless genius and the daughter of a sacred grounds divine sect, Lian Huahan was very arrogant, and no one was worthy of her attention. But now, she couldn't help but be very attracted to Jiang Tian, and she couldn't help but feel jealous of Huang Linger. Huanglinger was a girl who came from a poor and desolate planet. How could she be worthy of such a genius? Only she could be. Thinking about this, she stepped forward and bowed with a smile. Congratulations on successfully breaking through to the soul formation stage, fellow Taoist. You can be called a mighty figure now. Her waist was slender, her chest was high, and her temperament was ethereal. She was graceful, just like an immortal. Jiang Tian ignored her. His eyes were indifferent, as if he was hanging high up in the sky, without a trace of emotion. Lian Huahan didn't feel offended. She smiled faintly with her beautiful eyes, and was about to chat with Jiang Tian. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble. Xie Zhangying shot out of the deep pit, and the wounds on her body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. She pointed at Jiang Tian and shouted, "You're just a newly ascended soul formation cultivator. How dare you hurt me? I once dominated the 9 celestial sects." The genius of the previous generation was enraged. He didn't use his full strength just now. It was just a casual attack, thinking that it would be enough to kill Jiang Tian. However, Jiang Tian suddenly succeeded in breaking through, and attacked him head-on, truly catching him off guard. To this overlord who had once dominated an era, and was called a Tao ancestor on this continent, it was a great humiliation. At this moment, everyone realized that Xie Zhangying didn't use her full strength just now. Lian Huahan was so frightened that her face turned cold, but she still gritted her teeth and mustered her courage. "Thank you, senior. Fellow Taoist Jiang has a good relationship with the Luoying sect. Please give us some face and don't attack him anymore." She was natural and graceful. Every frown and smile was charming. After all, she was born in a good family. Seeing this, Saint Qianma sighed softly. The icing on the cake was far better than providing timely help. Jiang Tian had already survived the crisis, and climbed to a height that even you had to look up to. If you came over again, would he care about you? The current Jiang Tian might not have the strength to suppress Xie Zhangying, but at least he had the strength to escape unscathed. Yes, let's give the Luoying sect some face. Since he's a genius, we shouldn't kill him. We're not bad people. The Void Returned Saint said coldly. "Junior thanks you." Lian Huahuan's face was full of joy, as if she had done a great service. Xie Zhangying also looked hesitant, because she was also unsure of Jiang Tian's strength. Jiang Tian's attack just now was indeed evil. He also realized that Jiang Tian's soul formation realm cultivation was extremely high, and he might not be able to suppress him. However, he was unwilling to retreat just like that. Firstly, he was defeated by a junior and his reputation would be damaged. Secondly, he also needed the 6 Paths Lotus Tree. After pondering for a while, Xie Zhangying said coldly with hatred in her eyes, "The old man can give you face and not kill him, but he has to bow down to me and admit his mistake and share his immortal fate with me." Just as Saint Qianma had guessed, Jiang Tian did not look at Lian Huahan. Instead, he said coldly, "You won't kill me anymore. Is this the end of the grudge? Old bastards, listen up. I'm going to break your old coffins. Anyone who tried to attack me just now will self-destruct their inner world. I won't destroy your sects and families." Jiang Tian's words were extremely domineering. Everyone present was shocked, unable to believe what they were seeing. Any Void Returned Saints who tried to sneak attack him just now would die. Suicide? Jiang Tian just did not want to implicate them. This sentence was extremely arrogant and looked down on the world. This person is really domineering. He wants to challenge the 13 saints alone? He just reached the soul formation realm. How strong is his soul formation realm cultivation? Everyone could not help but exclaim in their hearts. Lian Huahuan's face was slightly red with embarrassment. She did not expect Jiang Tian to not give her face and attack the Void Returned Saints. Chapter 2065. Fellow Cultivator, you've just broken through, and your foundation is not stable yet. You shouldn't make too many enemies. Saint Qianma's expression changed when she heard that, and she tried to persuade him. Xie Zhangying was not the only saint on the other side. There were 13 of them, and each of them was a veteran saint. Moreover, most of them were old monsters at the level of the living dead. To put it bluntly, their lifespan was almost up, and they were not far from returning to the heavens. In order to obtain the immortal opportunity, they would not hesitate to kill Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian glanced at her. A trace of pity flashed across his eyes. He said coldly, "You're too weak." He said coldly, "Senior, if I had broken through a few seconds later, you might have been killed by these rascals. I will take revenge for this. Fellow cultivator, why do you have to do this?" Lian Huahan had a glib tongue, and she took the moral high ground to persuade him. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. You have such great talent and high aspirations. You should be broad-minded and make friends. Only then can you go far. The immortal opportunity has no owner, so it's normal for everyone to want a share of it. Just follow the will of the people, and share the immortal opportunity of the Six Paths Lotus Tree with everyone. The demonic wave is coming, and all the saints present are the pillars of the continent. They need the protection of the immortal chi of the Six Paths Lotus Tree to resist the invasion and protect this world. Jiang Tian was so angry that he laughed and said coldly, "Why didn't you stop these old bastards when they were trying to kill me? Now I want to take revenge, but you're stopping me and asking me to share their Six Paths Lotus Tree. What's the meaning of this? I'll tell you straight, the Six Paths Lotus Tree will not leak any immortal chi. No one can even take a leaf." Jiang Tian would naturally resist the demonic wave, and even subdue the devil's claws. However, devil chi was not something that could be cleared away in a day or two. The Six Paths Lotus Tree could remove the demonic chi, and prevent humans, beasts, and demons from becoming demons again. Moreover, he had just used too much of the immortal chi of the Six Paths Lotus Tree. If these supreme saints took some more, he might die. Jiang Tian's eyes were sharp as he coldly shouted, "If you dare to say another word, I'll slaughter you as well." Lian Huahan was almost choked to death by Jiang Tian's words. She couldn't help but feel both ashamed and indignant, and her beautiful face flushed red. She gritted her teeth and her full chest heaved up and down in anger. "I advised you with good intentions, but in order to save your life, you treated my good intentions as ill intent. Good words are hard to persuade. I'll just let an egomaniac like you die." After all, Xie Zhangying had been to the Central Galaxy for training, so she knew many immortal techniques. No matter how good one's bone structure was, how talented one was, and how high one's grade was, one was still a divine transformation realm cultivator. The other party had more experience and more immortal arts than you, and was more powerful than you. If you were to fight him seriously, you wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. Brat! How arrogant of you! Xie Zhangying's eyes were filled with hatred as she said coldly, "This time the old man is serious about killing you. Don't think that the old man is also an ordinary void return cultivator, or a weakling saint. This time, the old man will show you what a real void return cultivator, who can control the Grand Tao is like." His voice was as cold as ice. Even if people heard it, their souls would be frozen and they couldn't help but tremble in fear. Clang! Xie Zhangying attacked fiercely. Her fingers and palms covered the sky and the earth, suppressing Jiang Tian. "Immortal Tao Law! Is this the Immortal Tao Law?" everyone exclaimed. With this palm strike, everyone was shocked to discover that the space within 100 meters around Jiang Tian's body was actually distorted. All kinds of Dharma laws and Grand Taos lost their effectiveness. Then the space collapsed inch by inch. Even space didn't exist anymore. Boom! At this moment, the onlooking cultivators within a 100-mile radius all stepped back. Even Lian Huahan and Saint Qianmo retreated with fear on their faces. "Senior, what's the Immortal Tao Law?" a disciple asked curiously and in shock. "I heard that the 9 celestial sects are located right below the 9 heaven deity realm. There will be deity chi flowing and immortal Tao laws falling," Saint Qianmo explained in shock. "These immortal Tao laws are extremely solid, and can destroy all Dharma laws and Grand Taos in the mortal world. That's why it's so powerful. Even void return saints don't dare to fight it head-on. So Xie Zhangying isn't as weak as he said. He also encountered some opportunities in the 9 celestial sects. He collected some immortal Tao laws and refined them into his body. Even if it only covers a 100-meter radius, it'll be a big problem for this cultivator. Lian Huahan couldn't hide the pain in her heart and sneered. This kid is arrogant and doesn't listen to good advice. This time, even if he doesn't die, he'll be half dead. While everyone was talking, the immortal Tao laws had already fallen rapidly, as if a negative vacuum had appeared. Gusts of wind blew in a 100-mile radius. Mountains and pieces of demonic soil flew up and rushed towards the space under his palms. They were compressed to 1,000th of their original size. The giant mountains were reduced to gravel, and the giant peaks were reduced to gravel. It was a sacred realm that was no longer the Dharma laws and grand Taos of this world. It had been replaced by the immortal Tao laws that Xie Zhangying had released. Everything was under his control. A few nascent soul itinerant cultivators didn't have the protection of the flying boat and were a bit slower. They were directly sucked in and disappeared. Break. Jiang Tian took a step forward and his black hair fluttered. An unparalleled energy spread out, and he struck with his palm. You're using your body to resist my immortal Tao laws. You're hitting a rock with an egg. At this moment, Xie Zhangying actually laughed. His immortal Tao laws were extremely solid. It took him 500 years of hard work and a narrow escape to collect and refine them. Killing saints was like cutting grass, refining stars and shattering moons. How could his body resist it? Even if he was made of grand Tao treasure metal, it wouldn't work. Even if Jiang Tian was an infant deity, it wouldn't work. Even a deity-grade soul formation cultivator would only be able to resist for a while, and would be severely injured. At this moment, many Void Return saints sneered and mocked. He's using his soul formation body to resist the immortal Tao laws of a returning cultivator saint. He's simply courting death. Arrogant, he doesn't know his limits. He wants to monopolize the immortal opportunity. A few others were eager to take a share of the loot. They were so excited that they rubbed their palms. I didn't expect him to die so soon. He's destined to be a shooting star that can only shine for a while. Lian Huahan also shook her head and chuckled, as if she was gloating. She had overestimated this guy after all. Perhaps he had a good opportunity and was extremely talented. However, he was an itinerant cultivator after all, and didn't come from a famous sect. His foundation was weak and his knowledge was naturally poor. Even Saint Qianma and Princess Mou frowned, thinking that Jiang Tian was too arrogant in this battle. On the other hand, Huang Linger was worried for Jiang Tian. Her little face was pale from nervousness. Clang. However, when Jiang Tian came into contact with the immortal Tao laws, the latter crumbled like tofu and dissipated quickly. Jiang Tian was like a god who had created the world. With a single step, he seemed to be able to reach anywhere. Like a hot knife cutting through a block of cold jelly, he easily passed through the Saint domain and arrived before Xie Zhangying. Bam! Jiang Tian lashed out with a sharp whip kick. There was nothing fancy about it, and no dermic powers were released. It was just an ordinary martial art of the mortal world as it lashed towards Xie Zhangying. However, the whip leg slashed out like a heavenly blade, and it instantly broke through his protective immortal Tao laws that seemed like precious gold and glass, and it struck heavily onto his neck. Crack. His neck was bent to the extreme and let out a terrifying crisp sound. Then it broke and his head flew into the sky. Bright sage blood and broken bones that were like white jade scattered all over the sky. Jiang Tian stood proudly in the void with his hands behind his back. There was no fluctuation of dermic powers, as if this was how it should be. His eyes were neither sad nor happy as he said indifferently, "Daoist Xie, can you withstand my physical attack?" How strong was Jiang Tian now? Even he wasn't sure himself. He had become a divine-grade god and broken the shackles of the mortal world. His body was extremely strong and was equivalent to a young god in the immortal world. He could even beat up an ordinary immortal from the immortal world, or an early-stage immortal-level reunion immortal from the immortal world. Moreover, Xie Zhangying was immortal after all. She had only picked up some immortal Tao laws from the 9 heavens immortal world from the 9 immortal sects. Chapter 2066. Xie Zhangying didn't have the time to answer Jiang Tian's question. The scene at this moment was very strange. Xie Zhangying's head flew in the sky while her body flew below. The two of them wanted to find each other and merge into one. However, as soon as he touched an invisible barrier, he was stunned. The two of them were like rats on fire, squeaking and squeaking. The heaven and earth in their bodies shook uneasily, as if they were about to collapse. Power! Saint Qianma exclaimed. Daoist Zhang's physical attack formed a strange force field barrier. Is this the immortal power and divine power that's being transmitted? In the cultivation world, power was instantaneous. Only laws and Daos could last forever. Jiang Tian's kick just now didn't have any laws, but it contained divine power. This divine power wasn't a law, but it was comparable to a Dao or even stronger. It could last forever and form a divine power barrier in the sky, separating Xie Zhangying's head and body. Therefore, the two of them kept flying in the same direction, trying to merge into one. But Jiang Tian's divine power barrier was too big. The head and body flew for a long time, but still couldn't fly out of its range. Save Elder Xie. This kid is vicious. Let's work together and kill him. A return to Void Stage great sage wearing a monkey mask stepped out from the shadows as he yelled. Let's go. That's right. If Elder Xie dies, we'll have one less helper. Another return to Void Stage saint revealed his true form. He wore a strange bird head mask and said in a cold voice, "This kid is evil. He might have become a demon. We have to kill him and get rid of the demon." For the righteous Dao. One after another, the saints walked out and shouted. This scene was ridiculous. They were obviously selfish. Their cultivation arts and physiques weren't as good as Jiang Tian's, but they slandered Jiang Tian for becoming a demon. Poof! Jiang Tian glanced at them with a smile and suddenly used his dermic powers to tap the air. He controlled a divine-grade Dao, which was so powerful that it was like a god from the divine world attacking and destroying all the laws and Daos in the mortal world. Who could resist it? Pa! Xie Zhangying directly exploded in the air. The world in her body was destroyed by Jiang Tian's finger. Rumble! At that moment, the destructive power was truly terrifying. It was as if a star had exploded. Surging shockwaves swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, destroying everything. The entire critical juncture canyon, which was hundreds of thousands of kilometers in radius, was shaking violently. This was the power of the explosion of the world in his body. It was like the explosion of a world, far surpassing the explosion of a star. As for the nuclear explosion, it was not even 1/10,000th of its power. Jiang Tian released his domain to protect the Eastern Empire's flying ship, Qianma, Luoying sect, and the others. But the others were not so lucky. Whoosh! Whoosh! Many large flying ships flew into the distance, or dove into the abyss to avoid the shockwaves. However, he was still sent tumbling out, and many of his Dao patterns were destroyed. Clang! Nearby, several small flying boats were directly torn apart. Dao artifacts were indestructible and could enter the interior of a star, but they were all melted into molten steel in an instant. As for the cultivators inside, not even a drop of slag was left. Jiang Tian, who was nearby, was not affected at all. His white robe was fluttering in the wind, and there was no dust on it. He was like a god who had descended to the mortal world. Nothing could hurt him. It could be said that that area was completely wiped out by the explosion of Xie Zhangying's world. Only Jiang Tian and a dozen void return saints were left. They stood still between heaven and earth. Who else? Jiang Tian glanced at the sages with a cold and disdainful gaze. For a moment, there was a dead silence. There was complete silence. The soul formation realm cultivators in the distance were all trembling in fear. Even the 13 void return saints who wanted to besiege him were stunned. Jiang Tian had really killed a saint. This saint was not only a genius back then, but also a peerless void return cultivator. Besides, Xie Zhangying had also fought with the determination to die. She did not hold back at all. But still, she was slaughtered by Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian had only just reached the soul formation realm, but he already had such power. The situation did not look good. Let me deal with you. A void return saint wearing a green robe and a bronze fox mask walked over. His hair was still black and his voice was clear and magnetic. Obviously, he was one of those void return saints who was injured, poisoned, or obsessed with cultivation, and was about to die. He was still at the peak of his strength, unlike Xie Zhongying, who was on the verge of death. But he had to fight to the death, which made him even more terrifying than Xie Zhongying. All right, Jiang Tian nodded with satisfaction. I'll use you as a whetstone to hone myself. He was full of arrogance and confidence. He was obviously treating this person as his opponent. Humph! The Void Returned Saint with the bronze fox mask snorted. There was a flash of light on his body. Immediately, an ice-cold silver battle suit appeared and protected him firmly. The battle suit flashed with silver light and patterns of feathers appeared. Dao flowed and resonated with the Dao. This is a battle suit made from the immortal feather Great Dao treasure metal. Legend has it that it can only be found in places like the 9 great immortal sects. Saint Qianma was shocked. This battle suit was filled with immortal aura and intertwined with the laws of immortal aura. It was condensed and elegant, giving people a feeling that the Tao was natural and one with the heavens. She had mixed feelings. She was heartbroken. These Void Returned Saints were supposed to be the pillars of this continent to resist the demonic wave. But they were blinded by greed and forgot everything. They only wanted to kill Jiang Tian and take the 6-path lotus tree to strengthen themselves. They wore masks because they knew that they were too selfish. They felt guilty and did not dare to show their true faces. Huang Linger and many others were also very worried for Jiang Tian. In order to kill Jiang Tian, the fox-masked great sage had already taken out a supreme treasure and put on his trump card battlesuit. The great sage's fox mask only revealed a pair of cold eyes. They shone with divine light and were extremely frightening. The immortal feather Great Dao battle suit flowed with silver light and covered his entire body, becoming one with the Dao. He walked step by step towards Jiang Tian. With a wave of his hand, he held up a purple gold divine lamp. This divine lamp shot out rays of beautiful light. It shone brightly and seemed to fall from the heavens, making him look like a god. Saint Qianma took a closer look. There was no wick in the divine lamp. It was clearly a star that had been refined into a wick by supreme dermic powers. Its power was extremely terrifying. Without saying anything, the fox-masked great sage attacked. The purple gold divine lamp in his hand shot out a bright and sharp purple light. It pierced through the demonic qi and tore through the demonic laws. The light was bright and pierced towards Jiang Tian. Good. Interesting. Jiang Tian sighed softly and seemed to be quite satisfied. He waved his hands and casually cut off a space. He poured a divine-grade Great Dao into it and formed a huge shield. This huge shield was as smooth as a mirror. There was nothing fancy about it, but it was absolutely smooth and had a simple beauty. Whoosh! In an instant, the purple light shot out. It was as if all the light of a star had gathered into one beam. It was dazzling and brilliant. It could pierce through the 9 underworlds, pierce through mountains and rivers, and even refine stars and shatter moons. Chapter 2067. Clang. Jiang Tian raised his giant shield, which crushed the void and collided with the dazzling purple light. Suddenly, the purple light burst out, sweeping and refracting. With a whoosh, a large flying ship thousands of miles away was pierced by the refracted light. The hole was very small at first, and then the red light quickly spread from the hole to the entire ship. Soon it melted, and the molten steel flowed to the ground. Hundreds of cultivators died before they could even let out a scream. At this moment, everyone was stunned by Jiang Tian's strength. The shield that he condensed out of thin air had such a terrifying defensive power. It was as if a true god had descended to the mortal world. The fox-masked sage's eyes flashed with coldness and determination, and he raised his hand. Whoosh! The purple divine lamp flew out and fixed in the sky. It was so bright that it was like a purple sun hanging in the sky. Under the control of his mind. Boom! Boom! Thousands of purple lights poured down, and each of them was like a purple waterfall, falling toward Jiang Tian. Some of the purple lights could bend, and they danced toward Jiang Tian like purple dragons. This scene appeared very beautiful, but it was actually incomparably dangerous. Wherever the purple light passed, the earth was pierced tens of thousands of miles deep, and even the demonic earth that contained the demonic laws was melted into magma. Jiang Tian was at the center of the purple waterfall, and he was washed by the purple waterfall and bitten and swallowed by the purple poisonous dragons. The purple divine lamp's power was boundless. It was refined by a real star, and it was more condensed and full of spirituality. It turned into destructive light and rays, and it was going to burn Jiang Tian into ashes. Boom! Jiang Tian sighed softly, and suddenly he formed a seal with his fingers and cast 1,000 lotuses. The divine-grade Great Tao of Gung metal turned into lotus petals, which were more condensed than the Great Tao treasure metal. They wrapped Jiang Tian tightly, resisting the purple light and rays. In the next moment, this golden lotus suddenly cut through the sky, splitting the purple light, and flew toward the fox-masked saint. The eyes behind the mask flashed with terror. It was too late for him to take back the purple lamp and escape. This was because Jiang Tian had actually used a great divine tier Great Tao to suppress the void, forming a domain that froze the purple lamp in place. This time, the bronze-masked man was in a dilemma. He wanted to escape, but his trump card was actually being controlled by Jiang Tian. Gritting his teeth, the fox-masked saint could only burn his inner world to dodge Jiang Tian, while continuing to activate the magic lamp, hoping to refine Jiang Tian as soon as possible. However, the golden lotus soon split the purple radiance apart, and rushed toward the bronze-masked saint. Whoosh! The 1,000 lotuses bloomed. Jiang Tian leaped out like a god from the flowers and slashed at the bronze-masked saint with his fingers like a knife. Divine ranked vermilion birds Great Tao of Fire. Let me show you the true power of the Great Tao. In an instant, a long flaming knife was formed and slashed toward the saint. Every flame had a vermilion bird flying in the sky. Endlessly fire runes formed an endless sea of fire like the sun. Ah! Block it! Feeling the power that seemed to be able to burn the 9 heavens, the fear in the bronze-masked man's eyes intensified. With a roar, he took out a black, translucent shield that looked like black jade. This shield was made of Xianming cold jade. This type of jade could only be born in an extremely cold place like the 9 Serenities Hell. It was extremely cold and condensed. Clang! The moment Jiang Tian's vermilion birdly fire knife collided with the black shield, the entire time seemed to have frozen. Clang! The sound of the collision was earth-shattering. It was so loud that it almost made one's eardrums explode. The rolling sound waves rushed into the sky, broke through the Great Critical Canyon, and rolled toward Saint Origin World, creating a hurricane in a radius of 1 million miles. Such power was terrifying. Even Saint Qianma was terrified. She knew that even if she attacked with all her strength, she wouldn't be able to unleash even a tenth of such power. Crack! In the next moment, the crowd was shocked to see that the shield made of Xianming cold jade actually cracked under the flaming long saber. The frightening cracks spread across the entire shield like a spider web. In the next moment, the shield suddenly collapsed, melted, and turned into flames that scattered in all directions. No, the fox-masked man looked at Jiang Tian as if he was looking at a demon. Because Jiang Tian's flame hadn't touched him, and he was blocked by the Xianming shield, it still burned his arm until it cracked, and he lost his life. Under extreme fear, the bronze-masked man quickly retreated as if he didn't care about his life. At this moment, he didn't care about the purple gold divine lamp that Jiang Tian had frozen in the sky. He only wanted to run for his life. The immortal feather Great Tao treasure metal was very mysterious. It was said that after the immortal birds of the immortal world died, they fused with metal, and the immortal Tao law in the immortal birds were attached to it. Therefore, the armor made of immortal feather Great Tao treasure metal naturally had the effect of increasing speed. Whoosh! Countless feather patterns appeared on the armor. The fox-masked man suddenly opened 2 wings that were completely made of Tao and Tao. His speed instantly soared to an unprecedented level. It was as if he could instantly cross the sea of stars and the universe. He broke through space. At this moment he was terrified. Run! Escape first! What is this kid's background? He's only at the soul formation realm, but he can block the power of the purple star lamp. This is refined from a star, and can even penetrate a continent. But it can't even hurt a hair on his body. He even froze it and took it away. What a loss! The Tao of Fire that he used is extremely condensed. It can even melt the shield made of Xianming cold jade. This is too terrifying. The surrounding space twisted and retreated frantically. The fox-masked saint gritted his teeth and swore to himself, "Damn it! This kid is really evil. He's like the reincarnation of an immortal. He must have a lot of mystic techniques and treasures on him. I have to prepare well this time. I have to gather the return to void stage saints from other continents and planets. No, it's best to find a Dao integration stage perfected immortal and capture him. Not only do I have to take back my divine lamp, but I also have to find out his secrets. If I can get my hands on them, I'll have a glimmer of hope to transcend the tribulation and become an immortal." The fox-masked sage ran for his life and used the immortal feather Great Dao treasure metal to break through space. In the blink of an eye, he crossed hundreds of thousands of kilometers and was about to rush out of the liminal canyon. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared. It was Jiang Tian. How is this possible? The fox-masked sage was shocked. He had used the immortal feather Great Dao treasure metal, so his speed was extremely terrifying. However, he was still stopped by Jiang Tian. "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."